Chapter 2284. Page 1/1. In short, the people who lived on Death Island were also humans from Earth. However, they were bloodthirsty and murderous. They never treated living outsiders as humans. Whenever they caught a living person, they would tie them up and bring them directly to the big monster, which was far larger than any ordinary creature on Earth. They would let the big monster swallow the living person alive. Some people were even grabbed by the giant monster and had their heads bitten off in one bite, their bodies, hands, and feet bitten off in the other. The miserable state of his death was something that no one could accept. Hearing Horace's words, everyone present felt their scalps go numb, and their hearts trembled. Then, your friends are. Even Calvin, who had always been calm and collected, couldn't help but feel his heart skip a beat when he heard Horace's words. That's right. When we first arrived at Death Island, we were caught by the group of humans who lived there. It was only later that we found out that they were feeding the monster with live humans. My friends were all bitten to death by that big monster on the spot. That big monster ate my friends and spat out their bones in front of everyone, Horace interrupted Calvin. At this moment, Horace's fists were clenched tightly, and he was so scared that he couldn't move. His mind was replaying the scene that made him tremble with fear. This world, there's actually such a monster. What kind of god is it? When the younger Felix heard Horace's words, his body trembled violently, and his face turned pale. Horace was silent for a long time. It was as if he was trying to adjust his state of mind. After a while, Horace finally adjusted his state of mind. He heaved a sigh of relief, and then gently wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead, and said to Felix, I don't know what kind of god that monster is, but when I first saw it, I was really scared out of my wits. That monster was 10 meters tall, and as tall as a 3-story building. Its body was extremely sturdy, and it was bound by the group of people on Death Island. After I left Death Island, I went through all the information about the species on Earth, but all the species on Earth were completely different from that big monster. It was just like the hell in the legends. Everything on the island has transcended nature and the world. Horace's words reverberated throughout the hall, causing everyone to tense up once again. I'm a little scared. Ella tugged at the leather jacket on her upper body and shrunk back in fear. Don't panic. Before we came here, I asked someone to get us some weapons, guns, ammunition, and the like. Everyone should carry some with them before we set foot on the island. Even if something really happens, we can still protect ourselves. Calvin said as he patted Ella's back. Hearing that Calvin was armed, Ella heaved a huge sigh of relief. The big monster you mentioned, is it that it has a head like a bull's horn, a body like a tiger's, and hooves like a horse's, but is more than 10 times larger than all the creatures on Earth? Just when everyone was in a state of panic, Yun Jian, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said this. After she finished speaking, everyone turned to look at Horace. Horace's eyes widened abruptly when he heard what Yun Jian said. He looked at Yun Jian in shock and exclaimed in front of Calvin, Ella, and everyone else's horrified gazes, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. How did you know? Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2285. After hearing Horace's words, everyone stared at Yun Jian in shock. They wanted to get an answer from Yun Jian. How did Yun Jian know what the monster on Death Island looked like? She had never been to Death Island. How did she know what the monster on Death Island looked like? Horace himself was staring at Yun Jian in shock and fear. It was as if he wanted to stare a hole into Yun Jian's body. How did she know what that monster looked like? Under everyone's gaze, Yun Jian's lips curled up. She smiled coldly and said, I guessed. You guessed it so accurately. Fei Lei glared at him and took the lead to speak. After Fei Lei said that, Yun Jian didn't say anything else. Everyone could only let it go. Seeing Yun Jian like that, she definitely wouldn't want to say anything else. At that moment, Yun Jian was still sitting on the deck of the yacht. She placed one hand lazily on her lap and narrowed her eyes. Her thoughts drifted far away. According to Horace's words, Yun Jian could roughly guess the identity of the monster. The monster must be a demonic beast from the myriad continents. As for why it was on Death Island and why the group of people fed it with living humans, it was still a mystery to Yun Jian. After sailing for about 5 hours, the surroundings didn't change. After the sun set, everyone slept in a few rooms on the yacht at night. One person stayed up to keep watch. Until 4:00 in the morning of the second day, Yun Jian was woken up by an excited voice. "Look! Quick, look!" After hearing the voice, Yun Jian rolled over and got out of bed. As soon as she walked out of the room on the yacht, she saw a thick fog pervading the surroundings. It was like a fairyland and was very beautiful. Legend had it that Death Island would only appear on the surface of the Indian Ocean at dawn. Thick fog pervaded the surroundings. It was so beautiful that it attracted passing ships to dock at the shore of Death Island. However, the more beautiful something was, the more dangerous it was. That faintly discernible island is the Death Island. "Everyone, get ready," Horace said in a trembling voice. Horace paused for a moment before continuing. "As soon as we enter the Death Island, the humans on the Death Island will appear and capture us. We must remain vigilant at all times." Horace's words made everyone on the yacht turn around and grab all kinds of weapons. They held them in their hands and maintained their vigilance. Until the ship docked at the shore, everyone then carefully disembarked from the ship, trying not to disturb the group of humans who would feed living humans to huge monsters. Horace, Calvin, and the others were extremely cautious, as if they were afraid of disturbing the monsters on Death Island. However, just as Horace, Calvin, and the others were being extremely cautious, Yun Jian jumped off the boat and walked towards Death Island in an extremely lazy manner. She didn't seem to be afraid at all. What was more surprising was that Yun Jian purposely made heavy footsteps with every step she took. It was as if she was afraid of being discovered by the terrifying group of humans on Death Island. "Yun Jian, be careful. We will be discovered." Even Calvin couldn't help but sweat when he saw that. His expression froze. Who knew that Yun Jian, who was standing in front, narrowed her eyes and a strange light flashed across her eyes. She said indifferently, "It's too late. We have already been targeted. Please remember the domain name of this book." Mobile reading website. Chapter 2286. Page 1/1. Horace was the first to be taken aback by Yun Jian's words. Calvin, Ella, and Fei Lei were next. After being stunned for a moment, everyone's slightly trembling faces instantly turned as pale as a sheet of paper. "We were discovered so quickly?" Fei Lei was shocked. His eyes were wide open, and his mouth was so wide that his chin could touch his shoulders. He shouted in horror. Although the people around him were afraid, they didn't show it on their faces like Fei Lei, who was trembling with fear. Yun Jian, who stood in front, narrowed her eyes. "Put down your weapons and let them catch you." When Horace, Calvin, and the others clenched their weapons tightly and saw the group of humans walking towards them from all directions of Death Island, they were so scared that their scalps turned numb and their palms started to ooze cold sweat. Yun Jian's calm and short voice sounded. Only Horace, Calvin, and the rest could hear it. Hearing this, Fei Lei, who was standing behind Calvin, narrowed his eyes and whispered to Yun Jian, "You're crazy." That group of people. After the group of people captured them, they would do what they did to Horace's friends. They would bring them to the monster and then let the monster eat them on the spot. But Yun Jian actually asked them to put down their weapons. Were they tired of living? However, before Fei Lei could finish his words, Calvin's deep male voice sounded, "Listen to her." Calvin was the leader of the group, and even Fei Lei had to listen to him. Therefore, after hearing Calvin's words, Fei Lei put down his gun despite his fear. At that moment, the group of people from Death Island was already standing in front of Yun Jian's group. This group of people was no different from the humans on Earth, and they weren't the barbarians on Death Island. They also spoke English, which was commonly used on Earth. Yun Jian and the others did not resist. The group of people tied up Yun Jian and the others and brought them to the place where the monster was tied up. This was an open field beside a hillside. After Yun Jian and the rest were brought here, they saw a huge monster entrenched in the ground not far away. Perhaps it could be said that this was a gigantic magical beast. That fiend beast was 3 stories tall, with a head like a bull's horn, a body like a tiger, and feet like a horse's hooves. It was dozens of times larger than the creatures on Earth. Without a doubt, it was a magical beast from the myriad continents. At the same time, the gigantic magical beast's limbs were bound by thick and large chains, restricting its range of movement. What made Yun Jian puzzled was, why would this magical beast from the myriad continents be controlled by this group of humans? Just as Yun Jian narrowed her eyes at the scene before her, the leader of the group of people who had tied up Yun Jian and the others suddenly pointed at Yun Jian and Ayla and ordered his subordinates, "Make more breakfast for Fiend Beast. Give Lord Magic Beast some more breakfast, just those 2 girls." The leader of this group of people who lived on Death Island was called Berkey. Below Bogey's cheeks was a very thick beard that almost covered his entire face, making it impossible for outsiders to see Bogey's appearance. Only a pair of deep, dark eyes could be seen. Even Berkey's age was unknown to everyone present. At this moment, Ayla, who was called out, instantly turned pale with fright. "What? Me?" Ayla glanced at the magical beast in the distance. In the distance, the demonic beast was using its claws to grab a person who was struggling in fear. Just like that, the demonic beast sent the person into its huge mouth and swallowed the person who was crying and begging for mercy. The person was so scared that blood was flowing out of his body. Not long after, the magical beast's mouth began to bleed. After chewing for a minute, the magical beast swallowed a pile of bones in front of everyone. A living person was gone just like that. Ayla almost fainted at the sight of this scene. Calvin, Felix, and the others were so frightened that their faces turned pale and their lips trembled. The calmness that they had previously retained was now completely out of control. No wonder after leaving Death Island, Horace would rather pretend to be dead than return to Death Island. Every time the matter of Death Island was mentioned, it was as if he had recalled something terrifying. Because back then, Horace watched helplessly as his friend was sent into the mouth of that gigantic magical beast. That feeling of helplessness was simply unimaginable to outsiders. No. No, no, no. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. Ayla was so frightened that she struggled to escape. I want to go home. I don't want to stay in this damned place. I want to go home. But it was useless no matter how much she cried. Soon, someone came over to suppress Yun Jian and Ayla and walked towards the magical beast. Only after pushing Yun Jian and Ayla towards the magical beast did Berkey's subordinates quickly retreat. At this moment, the magical beast had already habitually scooped up Yun Jian and Ayla with both hands and was about to send them into its huge mouth. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2287. Page 1/1, No. Ayla. Ayla. That Yun Jian told us to put down our weapons, shouldn't she have a way? Is she trying to kill us on purpose? We didn't mistreat her along the way. How could she do this? Ayla. No, no. Looking at the fiend scooping up Yun Jian and Ayla and feeding them to its mouth, Fei Lei's eyes widened at the thought of the innocent person being devoured just like that. He let out a final cry of despair. Even Calvin, who had always been calm, seemed to have lost his composure at this moment. He was stunned by the sudden turn of events, and couldn't return to his senses for a long time. At this moment, Calvin, Felix and the rest finally understood Horace's heart that was on the verge of collapse. Seeing their little companions being sent into the mouth of a huge magical beast, and in the next moment, becoming a pile of bones like that innocent person, everyone was really panicking. The leader of this group of people who specialized in capturing people to feed the magical beast, Boji, was used to such scenes. He stood in place, listening to his subordinates beside him exclaim in surprise. Boss, once the Lord Magical Beast eats these 2 women, it will have eaten 10,000 people. Once the Lord Magical Beast has eaten 10,000 people, it will listen to your orders. At that time, let the Lord Magical Beast open the passage to the myriad continents. You can borrow the Lord Magical Beast's hand to become the ruler of the myriad continents. That's right, Boji and his subordinates were stationed at Death Island to capture people alive and offer them to the Magical Beast to eat. And Boji and the rest were just ordinary humans. 25 years ago, Boji and the rest were just a group of pirates drifting in the Indian Ocean. Then one day, they accidentally entered Death Island, and from there, they accidentally entered another world. That world was one of the myriad continents. Later on, Boji and the rest were forced to leave the myriad continents, but everything in the myriad continents fascinated them. The lifespan of an immortal cultivator could actually live for thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years. At a certain level, they could even live forever. In addition, everything in the myriad continents attracted him. Therefore, Baki was fascinated and wanted to take over the myriad continents. But in the end, Boji and the others were chased out of the myriad continents. However, before leaving the myriad continents, a black-robed man appeared. That person gave Bogi a small magic beast and said that he wanted Bogi to feed it with living people. When he fed 10,000 people, the magic beast would listen to him. Even if he wanted thousands of continents, this magical beast would be able to obtain them for him. Boji was tempted. After returning to Death Island, he immediately took action. That was what led to everything that happened later. And this little magical beast grew bigger and bigger, turning into its current terrifying appearance. Now, as he watched the magical beast devour 10,000 people, with only 2 people left to complete the task, all the cells in Bogi's body were trembling violently and boiling. On the other side, Yunjian and Ai La were caught in the fiend's hand and sent to its mouth. Then, in front of everyone, the magical beast sent Yunjian and Ella into its mouth. No! Calvin, Felic, and the others let out a final cry of despair. At this moment, Yunjian and Ella had already been swallowed by the magical beast. Everything was over. Baki laughed wildly. He seemed to have seen himself becoming the ruler of the myriad continents. As he laughed, Baki suddenly stopped laughing. His smile instantly froze. What did he see? That magical beast had just swallowed Yunjian and Ella, and had not even chewed. With a chi sound, the huge magical beast, starting from the top, seemed to have been sliced open by a huge sharp sword. Its body instantly split into 2 halves. This huge magical beast was instantly killed. And at that moment, the moment the magical beast's head split open, a girl in a black shirt and black pants used her mind power to grab another girl who had fainted from fright. Just like that, from where the magical beast's mouth had been, she gently landed on the ground in front of everyone from a height of more than 10 meters. The huge magical beast's body split into 2 halves and fell behind her just like that. At this moment, everyone present felt as if they had seen the god of slaughter from hell. But they saw that the girl with a cold expression was now smiling coldly. She suddenly spoke to Bogi and the others in front of everyone, but what she said shocked them so much that they forgot to breathe. A mere lowly magical beast, how dare you be so arrogant in front of me? Go to hell. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2288. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. At this moment, Ella was being held by Yunjian's spiritual power. Therefore, when she fell from a height of more than 10 meters, she did not fall straight down. Instead, she was gently sent to the ground. But at this moment, Ella had already fainted from the shock of the scene just now. She thought that she was already dead. After all, in the scene just now, Ella and Yunjian were directly sent into the demonic beast's mouth. As long as the demonic beast chewed, it could bite off Yunjian and Ella, just like how it swallowed the innocent person just now. It swallowed Yunjian and Ella into its stomach. If a normal person could survive this, it was simply unrealistic. Therefore, when the demonic beast swallowed Yunjian and Ella, everyone present thought that Yunjian and Ella were already dead. Calvin, Felic, and the others were so desperate that their faces turned pale. The moment Yunjian and Ella were swallowed, Calvin, Felix, and the others had already closed their eyes, not daring to watch the scene in front of them. But what they did not expect was that, the moment Yunjian and Ella were swallowed by the demonic beast, starting from the top of the demonic beast's head, the demonic beast's entire body was instantly torn into two halves as if it was pierced through by a huge sharp sword. Yunjian and Ella also successfully escaped from danger. However, the most shocking thing was not this. But, when Yunjian landed, she actually used her spiritual power to grab the unconscious Ella in the air. This means that the demonic beast's death was also caused by Yunjian. Who exactly is this Yunjian? She actually has the ability to tear the demonic beast's body into two halves after being swallowed. Calvin, Felix, and the others who saw this scene widened their eyes in horror. Horace, who thought that Yunjian and Ella were doomed, also looked at the scene in front of him in horror, unable to recover for a long time. Boki, who felt that he was about to succeed and that he was about to make that huge magical beast listen to his orders and lead him to the myriad continents, widened his eyes fiercely when he saw this scene. In that second, Bogi's expression changed drastically. He looked at the scene in front of him in horror. His face instantly paled as if he had seen something that was shocking and impossible. You, could it be that you are from the myriad continent? But that was impossible. This was impossible. This was impossible. That person said that even if it's the people of the myriad continent, there's absolutely no one who can kill this magical beast. Who are you? Bogi's face suddenly paled, as if he had seen something unbelievable. He stared at Yunjian in shock and fear, all the cells in his body trembling and boiling. That person was naturally the black-robed man who had raised Bogi's little magical beast. This is impossible. Could it be that you're from God's continent? But if the people of the God's continent want to leave, it's not that easy. There are no more than 10 deities in this world who can open a passage to leave the God's continent. Among the myriad continents, other than the legendary sorcerer god, who fell 1,000 years ago, no one else has the ability to kill my magical beast. Speak. Who are you? Bogi's face was distorted. He stared fiercely at Yunjian, as if he wanted to stare a hole into Yunjian's body. Horace, Calvin, Felix, and the others were confused. They had no idea what Bogi was talking about. But Horace and the others could tell that the sorcerer god of the myriad continents that Bogi was talking about was definitely an important figure who could shake the other world he was talking about. However, right after Bogi finished speaking, Yunjian stood in front of Bogi again in front of everyone present. Then, with a cold, emotionless voice, she spoke in front of Horace, Calvin, and the others, as well as Bogi and the group of subordinates behind Bogi, with a red arc and a cold, bone-chilling smile on her face. I'm sorry, but I'm the sorcerer god, the daughter of the sorcerer tribe of the sorcerer tribe, the #1 family in the Yulong continent that fell 1,000 years ago. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2289. Page 1/1. She was the daughter of the sorcerer clan from the sorcerer clan, the sorcerer goddess, who had once been famous throughout the 1,000 continents. Hearing Yunjian's words, everyone present was stunned. Bogi, on the other hand, had obviously heard about the legend of the sorcerer goddess in great detail when he accidentally went to the 1,000 continents 25 years ago. 25 years ago, the sorcerer goddess had yet to return, and Bogi's memories had stopped at the time before the sorcerer goddess's return. That was why Bogi had said, apart from the legendary sorcerer goddess who had fallen 1,000 years ago. However, Bogi had never imagined that this extremely ordinary young girl was the daughter of the sorcerer clan from the sorcerer clan of the Yulong continent, the legendary sorcerer goddess who had fallen. Bogi panicked. Recalling Yunjian's previous actions, he had a moment of panic. This young girl should really be the daughter of the sorcerer clan from the Yulong continent. Why are you here? Bogi suddenly changed his tone. He bent down and spoke to Yunjian in a manner that eunuchs used to belittle themselves in front of the emperor. The previously aggressive Bogi had actually changed his attitude towards Yunjian. Horace, Calvin, Felix, and the others were shocked when they saw this. That magical beast, where did you get it? Yunjian ignored Boji's words and asked calmly. Burja's eyes darted around when he heard what Yunjian said and quickly told her everything he knew. When I went to the Myriad continent, a man in a black robe gave it to me. That man said that as long as I fed the little magical beast he gave me to 10,000 people, that magical beast would listen to me and bring me back to the Myriad continent. Then I would be able to live on the 1,000 continents forever. Boji still had some reservations. Conquering the 1,000 continents was what Boji wanted. However, he could not say that to outsiders. Hearing Boji's information about the man in the black robe, Yunjian narrowed her eyes. Where is that person? This was the reason why Yunjian came to Death Island. Yunjian didn't come to Death Island to have fun. She came here to find information about the mysterious man. He had learned from Jian Ning's adoptive father that there was a place on the Death Island that led to the residence of the mysterious man. It was also because of this that Yunjian came here. I don't know the details, but I remember that 25 years ago, when I was in the Myriad continent, I secretly followed him after he left. I saw him walk into a place. As long as you promise not to kill me, I will bring you to that place. Maybe we can find it. What Boji feared the most now was being killed by Yunjian. He wasn't stupid. Among the group of people who had come with Yunjian, Horace's appearance had been recognized by Bogi at first glance. Horace was the only one who had accidentally let him slip away and escaped from Death Island. Since Horace dared to come back, it must be for revenge. I won't kill you. Bring me there, Yunjian narrowed her eyes and said after a flash of light flashed in her eyes. After hearing Yunjian's words, Horace did not scold Yunjian for not keeping her promise to avenge him. The group each had their own thoughts. Before heading to the 1,000 continents, which might be the residence of the mysterious man according to Bogi, they all stayed on the Death Island. Because Boji was afraid of Yunjian, he took out the best ingredients on the Death Island to entertain Yunjian and the others. Yunjian planned to wait for CE on the Death Island before heading to the 1,000 continents, where the mysterious man lived according to Bogi. Top reading website, M. Chapter 2290. At this moment, on the God's continent. Bailey family. The Divine Lord's mother, Bailey Yen, rubbed her eyes. Just as she was about to turn over and sit up, she suddenly felt something. She felt that there was someone sleeping next to her. That fleshy feeling was very obvious. There was a living person sleeping next to her. At this moment, Bailey Yen was wearing pajamas, and her smooth and beautiful thighs were exposed. She was lying on her side on the bed, and her beautiful curves were so enchanting and charming that people couldn't take their eyes off her. As it turned out, Bailey Yen was very beautiful. When Bailey Yen woke up and saw the handsome face of the Lord God sleeping next to her, she seemed to be frightened by something. She rolled off the bed and half dragged the quilt with her as she glared at the Lord God with a covetous expression. Why are you here? The Divine Lord propped himself up. The Divine Lord was no longer an old man. At this moment, the Divine Lord was very handsome. He was 80% similar to CE. However, in terms of appearance, the Divine Lord was slightly inferior to CE. Of course, he was only slightly inferior. The Divine Lord in his youthful appearance was still extremely handsome. Bailey Yen looked at his handsome face and blushed slightly. However, she still covered herself with the quilt and pointed at the door as she shouted at the Divine Lord. Get out. You get out. Your injuries are already healed. Hurry up and go back to your temple. Don't let me see you again in the future. We agreed that we would never contact each other again. After all, they were once husband and wife. Even if the Divine Lord had done something very excessive to her in the past, Bailey Yen still let the Divine Lord recuperate in her Bailey family for a long time. This injury was left behind when Yunjian and Ce fought with the mysterious person before entering the God Spring. Unexpectedly, the Divine Lord's handsome smile curved. He bent down and leaned in front of Bailey Yen. He reached out and pinched Bailey Yen's chin, wanting to kiss her. Bailey Yen wanted to hide, but in the end, she did not try her best to escape. After all, she still had feelings for the Lord God. Bailey Yen was gagged by the Lord God. After the kiss, the Lord God looked at Bailey Yen sincerely and sighed. Then, he said, "Yen, forgive me. Look, our child is already so big. We even have a child. Why are you still quarreling? Do it with me again, okay?" As he spoke, the Master God stretched out his hand towards Bailey Yan's lapel. "No, I won't forgive you." Bailey Yen glared at the Lord God. However, her mouth was gagged in the end. For some unknown reason, Bailey Yen was once again carried onto the bed by the main god. The reason why Bailey Yen hated the over-god so much was because Bailey Yen felt that she was the one who had been forced to do so from the very beginning. Tens of thousands of years ago, Bailey Yen was the most beautiful young lady on God's continent. At that time, the Master God was already the ruler of the God's continent. Once, after Bailey Yen accompanied her father to attend a gathering in the temple, the Lord God took a fancy to her. Secretly, the Lord God confessed to her, but Bailey Yen rejected him. Later on, the Bailey family's patriarch turned 10,000 years old. Hence, they held a gathering. The Lord God gave the Bailey family a lot of face and personally went to the Bailey family to congratulate them. Due to the Lord God's noble status and the fact that he had confessed to her, Bailey Yen was afraid that he would force her to marry him. Hence, she was afraid that she would run into the Lord God. Everyone in the Bailey family was in the Bailey family's main hall. Bailey Yen ran to the Bailey family's backyard alone. However, she had only taken a few steps when she ran into the Lord God. "Are you running away from me?" The Lord God grabbed Bailey Yan's hand and pressed her into a small stone cave in a rockery in the backyard. When she saw the Lord God suddenly appear, Bailey Yen was so frightened that she turned her face to the side. "No, no, do you hate seeing me that much?" When the Lord God saw how Bailey Yen was running away from him, fury welled up in his heart. In the next second, he pressed Bailey Yen against the rockery and pressed her body down. He lifted her beautiful legs and did something that Bailey Yen would never forgive him for thousands of years. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2291. The Master God had always been instilled with a strong ideal by his father. If you want something and can't get it, then forcefully take it. The Master God had never cared about women. However, all of this changed after he met Bailey Yen. He wanted her. Who knew that after Bailey Yen knew his feelings for her, she would avoid him again and again. Before the Bailey family's master's 10,000th birthday celebration, Bailey Yen had avoided the Master God more than once. As the saying goes, things should not be done more than 3 times. After the Master God confessed to her, Bailey Yen had avoided him at least 10 times. This time, the Master God was furious. Moreover, the Master God was the supreme god of the God's continent. His father had instilled in him a philosophy since he was young. If you want something and can't get it, then just take it. Therefore, on this quiet night with charming moonlight, on the rockery in the Bailey family's back garden, the Master God forcefully took Bailey Yen. The Bailey family's master was drinking and making merry in the Bailey family's hall. It was only until he got to know all the gods who came to celebrate his 10,000th birthday that he realized that his most beloved daughter, Bailey Yen, was missing. "Have you found her?" The Bailey family's master saw his subordinates walking over. He frowned and asked anxiously. At this moment, the banquet had reached its end. The subordinates of the Bailey family shook their heads when they heard the Bailey family's master's words. Your subordinates searched the surroundings but couldn't find the young lady. Why is this Yen Yen so disobedient? She ran out to play on such an important occasion. The Bailey family's master said with a hint of anger after hearing his subordinates' words. However, if one was familiar with the Bailey family's patriarch, they would be able to tell that even though the Bailey family's patriarch's tone was filled with dissatisfaction, his words were filled with endless doting towards his daughter, Bailey Yen. The Bailey family's master loved his youngest daughter Bailey Yen the most. Everyone in the God's continent knew this. Although the Bailey family was not one of the top 10 heaven-defying families in the God's continent, the Bailey family was a special case in the gods' continent. Although the Bailey family was not ranked in the top 10 heaven-defying families, the Bailey family's power was equivalent to the top 3 of the top 10 heaven-defying families. During this banquet, there were many people who came to the Bailey clan to congratulate the Bailey clan leader. Therefore, after clan head Bailey finished his angry words, a middle-aged man with the same appearance as clan head Bailey walked over and replied. Patriarch Bailey, your daughter, Bailey Yen, is not only beautiful, but also extremely intelligent. Therefore, you don't have to worry about your daughter in this regard. The little girl has grown up. It's normal that she doesn't like this kind of occasion. Patriarch Bailey, don't treat your daughter like a child. Also, I saw your daughter leave just now. Lord Overgod also walked in the same direction as your daughter. I'm sure Lord Overgod doesn't like such a lively place. Since the Lord Overlord is going in the same direction as your daughter, then even if your daughter encounters any trouble, the Lord Overlord will be there to support her. You don't have to worry about it. This person was obviously here to curry favor with Patriarch Bailey. However, when he heard this person say that he saw the Lord Overlord and his daughter leaving in the same direction, Patriarch Bailey really relaxed and heaved a sigh of relief. The Lord Overlord was the ruler of the gods' continent. He would protect every god on the gods' continent. Therefore, when he heard that the Lord Overlord was going in the same direction as his daughter, Patriarch Bailey also relaxed. Even if something happened to Bailey Yen, as the ruler of the gods' continent, the Lord Overlord would definitely not just stand by and watch. Therefore, Patriarch Bailey continued to entertain his guests. At this moment, he would never have dreamed that the Lord Overlord, whom he thought would protect his daughter even if something happened, was the source of the mishap of his beloved daughter. Bailey clan, back garden, rockery. The Lord Overlord pressed Bailey Yen here and took her by force. The surroundings quieted down. A certain part of her body felt as if it had been ruthlessly torn apart. At this moment, everything was finally quiet. A line of tears flowed from the corner of Bailey Yen's eyes. She waited for the Lord Overlord to leave her body. Then, her entire body slid to the ground like a puppet. The Lord Overlord did not let Bailey Yen slide to the ground. He hugged Bailey Yen and said solemnly to Bailey Yen, I'll propose marriage to your father tomorrow and marry you immediately. He was not the kind of person who only wanted Bailey Yen's body. He liked her. That was why he did such a thing. The Lord Overlord did not know that pursuing the girl he liked had to be done slowly. The philosophy instilled in his bones by his father was that if he wanted to obtain, he had to forcefully possess her. Bailey Yen was in the Lord Overlord's embrace. She struggled angrily out of the Lord Overlord's embrace. Then, she reached out and slapped the Lord Overlord's handsome face. She grabbed half of her body that was covered by her clothes and said angrily to the Lord Overlord, I won't marry you. I won't forgive you even if I die. You beast. Bailey Yan's slap stunned the Lord Overlord. Obviously, since the Lord Overlord was born, no one dared to treat him like this. However, Bailey Yan's slap did not anger the Lord Overlord. In the end, Bailey Yen covered half of her body with her clothes and ran away. 2 months later. Since then, the Lord Overlord had not appeared in front of her for 2 months. Bailey Yen did not dare to tell her father about that matter. Therefore, she acted as if nothing had happened. However, Bailey Yen was clearly unhappy these few days. She was still brooding over the fact that her virginity had been taken away. At the dining table, the Bailey family's head saw that Bailey Yan's complexion was not good. He asked, Yen, did you eat something bad recently? Why do you look so pale? Bailey Yen shook her head. Father, I'm fine. That's right. Our Yen is fine. What do you mean by pale complexion? Come, Yen, eat some meat. Bailey Yan's mother said. She picked up a piece of meat for Bailey Yen and brought it to her mouth. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2292. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. When Bailey Yen smelled the piece of braised pork that her mother had passed to her nose, she felt as if her nose had smelled some kind of very stimulating food. That feeling was as if he had smelled some kind of irritating object. This smell passed through her respiratory tract and directly reacted to her stomach. Then, the uncomfortable feeling in her stomach was transmitted to her brain. Therefore, Bailey Yen could not help but turn around and retch. That feeling was as if she could vomit everything that she had just eaten. It was extremely uncomfortable. Bailey Yen only returned to normal after the uncomfortable feeling of vomiting passed. She did not think too much about it. She just turned around and picked up her chopsticks, wanting to continue eating. After picking up her chopsticks, Bailey Yen first pushed back the piece of red braised meat that her mother had given her. Then, she said, "Mother, I don't want to eat meat. Recently, I feel like vomiting whenever I eat meat." Bailey Yen did not feel that she had suddenly become unable to eat meat recently. She just returned the piece of meat in her bowl to her mother who had just given it to her. She still lowered her head slightly and looked unhappy. Bailey Yen was obviously very concerned about her innocence being taken away by the Lord. However, she did not dare to tell her parents about this. Bailey Yen hid all her grief in the bottom of her heart. After saying this, Bailey Yen picked up her chopsticks and continued eating as if nothing had happened. She did not feel that there was anything wrong with it. However, after taking 2 mouthfuls of food, Bailey Yen felt that everyone's eyes seemed to be gathered on her. She raised her head and looked around. She saw that the people sitting around her were all looking at her with a stunned expression. "Father, Mother, what's wrong?" Bailey Yen chewed a mouthful of vegetables and pretended as if nothing had happened just now. She asked her parents a question. Yen, what's wrong with you? You. Red braised meat is your favorite. Why did you vomit just now? And the way you vomited was the same as when I was pregnant with you, Yen, don't tell me you're having morning sickness." At the end, Bailey Yan's mother widened her eyes. Obviously, even Bailey Yan's mother did not believe this statement. Her daughter was innocent. How could she be pregnant? Without waiting for Patriarch Bailey to express his opinion, Bailey Yen seemed to have suffered a violent blow after hearing her mother's words. She was so frightened that her hand touched the bowl and chopsticks on the table in a panic. In her panic, she accidentally knocked over the bowl and chopsticks. "Mother! How could I? Mother, father, brother, sister, I'm not feeling well. I'll go back first." Bailey Yen blinked her eyes as she looked to the side. She found a reason in a panic and found a reason as she fled. "Little sister, are you frightened by Mother?" "Huh, Mother, don't scare little sister. Little sister is a pure and innocent girl. How could she get pregnant just like that?" Bailey Yan's mother when she, Bailey Yen, Bailey Yen, Bailey Wen, Bailey Yen, Bailey Yen Bailey, Bailey translation how translation That translation Bailey, that translation. Bailey Yen translation. Bailey that. Hearing this, the matter, everyone. If they did not mention this matter, she would have completely forgotten that she had not had her period for 2 months. Ever since that time, her period had never come again. Could it be that she was really pregnant? The young Bailey Yen was still very tender. She was so scared that she hugged her body and slowly slid to the ground. What should she do? Bailey Yen didn't see it. After she ran into the house in a panic, a tall and handsome man was walking towards her boudoir right after she entered the house. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2293. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. In the past 2 months, the Lord did not appear before Bailey Yen. But that did not mean that the Lord did not secretly visit Bailey Yen. Ever since that day, the Lord felt Bailey Yan's deep hatred for him. That hateful gaze made the Lord's heart clench in pain. At this moment, Bailey Yen was hugging her knees as she slowly slid to the ground. Outside the house, the Lord had already walked to the door of Bailey Yan's room. He raised his hand gently, wanting to push the door open. But in the end, he retracted his hand and turned to leave. That handsome figure gave off an endless feeling of desolation. For the first time in his life, the Lord felt regret. His father taught him that if he took a fancy to something, if he could not get it, he should just take it. Was that right or wrong? Bailey Yan did not know that the Lord had come. She hugged her knees and sat on the cold ground for at least 2 hours. 2 hours later, Bailey Yan walked to her dressing table in a daze. She raised the scissors on the dressing table and pressed it against her belly. She did not want this child. She was still so young, how could she? But the moment Bailey Yan mustered up the courage to stab the scissors, she suddenly thought of her little brother who had just turned 2 years old. He was so cute with his pink little mouth. He would even open and close his mouth and shout at her with unclear words. Jijia. Jijia. Smack smack, he was so small and so cute. He could not even call out the word sister clearly and called it Jijia. Would the child in her belly be as cute as her little brother? Bailey Yan fell into a panic. In the end, after some struggle, Bailey Yan decided to abort the child. She did not like the Lord. At least, she did not feel that way now. Moreover, he had forced her. Bailey Yan was a very strong-willed person. She was also very stubborn. The more the Lord forced her, the more she wanted to go against him. She would definitely not give birth to his child. Hence, Bailey Yan began to plan how to abort the child. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, another 3 months had passed. Bailey Yan felt that her belly was slightly protruding. The God's continent was not like Earth, where one could buy medicine to abort a pregnancy. There was no abortion medicine here. In other words, in the God's continent, once a woman became pregnant, she would give birth to the child under normal circumstances. No woman would think of aborting the child. There was no hospital here to perform an abortion. Bailey Yan was just a little girl in the past. Because she had never come into contact with these things, she thought that it was a very simple thing to abort a child. But she was wrong. In the God's continent, once a woman became pregnant, she would have to give birth to the child. Unless she used a knife to stab the child in her stomach to death. There are some things that you don't understand because you haven't come into contact with them. However, when you encounter trouble and have no choice but to learn about it, you will realize that you are not the only one who has encountered such trouble. There are many people in this world who have encountered the same trouble as you. Take Bailey Yan for example. She heard that there was a mountain in the deity's continent. There was a kind of herb in the mountain that was specially used for abortion. Therefore, Bailey Yan went to the mountain that day. Unfortunately, Bailey Yan couldn't find the herbs even after searching the entire mountain. She sat on the edge of the cliff while clutching her stomach. The thoughts in her heart drifted far away. For a moment, she had the urge to jump down from the cliff or stab the child in her stomach that should not have been born. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2294. Bailey Yan's life was very happy. Her parents and siblings treated her very well. The outside world also knew that Bailey Yan was a very obedient little beauty. Bailey Yan didn't dare to imagine how the outside world would view her if her pregnancy was exposed. Bailey Yan, who had created an obedient image since she was young, couldn't believe it. The feeling of falling into hell after being praised to heaven. Bailey Yan shook her head in panic. Just as she was about to stand up, she didn't know that she stepped on air, and her entire body fell down the cliff. The bottom of this cliff was the god-destroying rock. Even if a god fell down, he would definitely die. Bailey Yan was so scared that her face turned pale. However, the moment she wanted to use her spiritual power to save herself, she suddenly stopped. In the eyes of the world, people who were extremely outstanding since birth could not accept a stain in their lives. Some people would rather die than be accused of indecent behavior one day after they had lived a life of glory. For example, Bailey Yan. Bailey Yen wanted to give up struggling. She might as well fall into this bottomless abyss and fall into the god-destroying rock. If she died, everything would be over. Bailey Yen was a very strong-willed woman. She couldn't accept being raped and still acting as if nothing had happened. Closing her eyes, Bailey Yen was about to fall off the cliff. However, before Bailey Yen could fall off the cliff, a slender hand grabbed her. For a long time, Bailey Yen didn't feel the feeling of falling off a cliff. When she opened her eyes, she saw an angry handsome face staring at her. The owner of this handsome face stared at her for 2 seconds and said angrily, "The god-destroying rock is at the bottom of the cliff. Do you want to die?" The person who came was none other than the Lord. Since the last time he forced Bailey Yen, this was the first time the Lord appeared in front of Bailey Yen. However, for the past 4 months, the Lord went to the Bailey family almost every day to see Bailey Yen. The day also fell. He just didn't dare to appear in front of Bailey Yen. He was afraid that Bailey Yen would be emotional if she saw him. Today, when Bailey Yen left the Bailey family and came to this mountain, the Lord followed behind Bailey Yen. He saw that she seemed to be looking for something, so he followed her all the way. Thinking that the god-destroying rock was at the bottom of this mountain, he wanted to follow her and protect her. However, the Lord never thought that Bailey Yen actually wanted to end her life. She actually dared die. When he thought of how Bailey Yen had closed her eyes and planned to directly fall off the cliff into the god-slaying rock and lose her life, the Master God's heart tightened. He was so scared that his face suddenly turned pale. He tightly grabbed Bailey Yen's hand and roared those words. Seeing the sudden appearance of the Lord God, Bailey Yen was so frightened that she reflexively wanted to take a step back. He even forgot that there was a cliff behind him and that the god-destroying rock was at the bottom of the cliff. Seeing this, the chief god flew into a rage. "You stupid woman, do you want to die so badly? Good. Do you want to die? Since you want to die, you might as well be the woman beneath me. Anyway, it wasn't the first time. Get some benefits for your Bailey clan and serve me well before you die." These words were definitely uttered by the sovereign in a fit of anger. Bailey Yen was frightened by the Master God's appearance. However, before Bailey Yen could react, the Lord God had already grabbed her hand and brought her to the temple in a flash. After bringing Bailey Yen back to the bedroom in the temple, the Lord God threw Bailey Yen onto the bed and quickly stripped off her clothes. However, the moment the Lord God was about to enter Bailey Yen, his gaze fell on Bailey Yen's originally slender, but now slightly arched lower abdomen. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com, wonderful book mobile version reading website, .com. Chapter 2295. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. When the Master God saw Bailey Yen's obviously protruding belly, he stopped his actions of forcing Bailey Yen. Bailey Yen was also stunned. She did not expect that the Lord God would bring her back to the temple and strip her of her clothes to force himself on her. However, Bailey Yen only reacted when she was stripped of her clothes. At this moment, she was not wearing anything. Not only that, it had been 5 months since the Lord God forced himself on her. During these 5 months, Bailey Yen had been hesitating whether she should kill the child in her belly. However, she could not bring herself to do it. After 5 months, her belly grew bigger. Bailey Yen was more and more afraid that her pregnancy would be discovered. Hence, she wore thicker and thicker clothes. Even on hot days, Bailey Yen would wear thick cotton-padded jackets. However, if this continued, she would not be able to hide her protruding belly at 6 or 7 months. Hence, Bailey Yen was anxious. Today, she heard that there was a kind of herb used for abortion in the nearby mountains. Bailey Yen quickly went to pick it. However, she did not expect to meet the Lord God. He even got angry for no reason and brought her to the temple. He wanted to do the same thing to her 5 months ago. Of course, all of this was not the main point. The main point was that she was pregnant. 5 months pregnant, her belly would not be obvious if she wore thick clothes. However, The Lord God had stripped her of all her clothes in a fit of anger just now. In this way, her protruding belly was completely exposed before his eyes. While the Lord God was in a daze, Bailey Yen hurriedly lifted up the corner of the blanket to cover her stomach and her private parts. She glanced to the side and very uncomfortably reached out to pick up the pile of clothes that the Lord God had taken off. However, before she could pick up the pile of clothes that the Lord God had taken off, Bailey Yan's slender wrist was grabbed by the Lord God. At the same time, the Lord God's magnetic male voice suddenly sounded. There was a hint of wild joy in his words. "You're pregnant?" Although the Lord God didn't have any experience, he wasn't stupid. Bailey Yan's protruding belly was different from being fat. That round, ball-like protruding belly was a sign of pregnancy. Seeing the overjoyed look on the Lord God's face, Bailey Yen was so scared that her face suddenly changed. She covered her stomach, lowered her head, and rolled her eyes. She couldn't help but defend herself. "No. I've been eating a lot lately, so I've gotten fatter." "What? Can't I get fat?" Bailey Yan's tone was very unfriendly. After saying this, Bailey Yen pushed the Lord God away. Then, she put on her clothes and ran out of the house. She absolutely could not let him find out that she was pregnant. She would definitely secretly abort the child in her belly. However, before Bailey Yen could run out of the Lord God's bedroom, the Lord God grabbed her wrist and pressed her against the door. "Not pregnant? Then why did you go up the mountain? Are you looking for herbs that can remove my child?" The Lord God was both surprised and angry. He was angry that she had kept her pregnancy a secret for 5 months and didn't even tell him. He was surprised that he was going to be a father. Bailey Yen, whose thoughts were exposed, stubbornly wanted to pull her hand back from the Lord God's hand. However, she realized that there was nothing she could do. Bailey Yen looked at the Lord God with a hateful gaze, then said angrily, "Yes, yes. Yes, that's right. I'm pregnant, but it's not your child." "Why? Do you really think that I can't have you? I found another man to give birth to this child." "Ugh." Bailey Yen had just said this when her mouth was blocked. The Lord God angrily blocked Bailey Yen's red lips and kissed her for a while. When he let go of Bailey Yen couldn't even breathe. The Lord God obviously didn't want to let Bailey Yen go. He angrily pushed Bailey Yen to the edge of the bed and pressed down on her. "You found another man after doing it with me? Fine, then I'll personally examine your body and see if you found another man." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2296. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Bailey Yen was eaten by the main god again. However, this time, the main god was careful as if he was afraid of hurting the child in Bailey Yan's womb. Although Bailey Yen did not like how the main god treated her, it was different from the first time. She was indeed moved by the main god's gentle treatment. However, Bailey Yen was a very stubborn person. In Bailey Yan's opinion, he had forced her. Even if, the second time really made her feel good, Bailey Yen just couldn't forget what the Lord God had done to her back then. He had raped her. Not long after, Bailey Yan's pregnancy was discovered by the Bailey family. The main god also came to ask for Bailey Yan's hand in marriage. He stood up fearlessly and directly admitted that the child in Bailey Yan's womb was his. He was the one who had forced Bailey Yen to have sex with him. Since then, the Bailey family did not dare to say anything to the main god. After all, the main god was the ruler of the gods' continent at this time. They could only agree to marry Bailey Yen to the main god. After Bailey Yen married the main god, she gave birth to a child. The child was named the Divine Lord. However, ever since Bailey Yen married the main god, she was unhappy. After the child was born, Bailey Yen did not fulfill her duty as a mother. Every time the main god had sex with her, Bailey Yen did not make a fuss. She allowed the main god to do whatever he wanted. She lived like a puppet. In the end, she did not even have any emotions. In the end, the main god had no choice but to let Bailey Yen return to the Bailey family. He would occasionally send someone to bring the Divine Lord to the Bailey family to see his mother. The main god would secretly go to the Bailey family to see Bailey Yen. After that, he never appeared in front of Bailey Yen again. For the next few thousand years, the two of them were stubborn and never met face to face again. Later on, the main god was injured by a mysterious person. The temple was destroyed, and the main god was brought to the Bailey family by CE. Of course, before that, when the main god let Bailey Yen return to the Bailey family, he changed his appearance to that of an old man in his 50s or 60s. He never changed back. Without Bailey Yan's company, he had already planned to live the rest of his life with the appearance of an old man. However, he didn't expect that after being injured, he would regain his original handsome looks and look 80% like CE. This memory was something that happened tens of thousands of years ago. At this moment, his soul returned to reality. Now, tens of thousands of years had passed. Bailey Yen, who had been stubborn and arrogant back then, no longer hated the Lord God for forcing her. But Bailey Yen just couldn't bring herself to accept his goodwill. Bailey Yan's waist was about to break after being pulled by the Lord God. She held her waist and neatly buttoned up the clothes on her body. Then, she was about to walk out. Before she could leave, the sovereign pulled her back. Yen, sleep a little longer. Sleep. Sleep on your own if you want to sleep. Get out of the Bailey family for me. After saying that, Bailey Yen flung away the Master God's hand and strode forward to drag the Master God out of bed. However, Bailey Yan's words, which were supposed to be insults, didn't sound like a curse when they came out of her mouth. Her voice was soft and weak, but in the Master God's ears, it sounded like she was acting coquettishly. It was very comfortable. The Master God grabbed Bailey Yan's hand and was about to do something unsuitable for children with Bailey Yen again. The voice of the Bailey family's subordinate came from outside the door. "Miss, the Lord God is here." Hearing this, Bailey Yen pushed the Master God away. "My son is back. Get out of my way, you old fart." Although these words were very fierce, when they came out of Bailey Yan's mouth, it gave people a feeling of tenderness as if she was flirting. "That's my son too." The Master God chuckled and got out of bed. The subordinate who reported the Lord God's arrival waited at the door for a while before seeing Bailey Yen walk out. The subordinate was just about to turn around when he saw the Master God, who looked 80% like CE, walk out of Bailey Yan's room. When he saw the Master God, the subordinate was stunned. The subordinate even rubbed his eyes to make sure that he wasn't seeing things. This person was really the Master God. Everyone on the God's continent knew about the grudge between the Master God and Bailey Yen. But what was going on today? Did the sun rise from the west? The Master God and Bailey Yen walked out of the same room. Did they make up? Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2297. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. The subordinate of the Bailey family was dumbfounded and took a long time to react. In the end, the subordinate turned around and chased after Bailey Yen and the overgod towards the main hall of the Bailey family. CE was standing in the middle of the main hall of the Bailey family. Seeing Bailey Yen and the overgod walking over, CE did not waste any time and immediately said to Bailey Yen, "Mother, why are you in such a hurry to get me back? Did something big happen in the deity continent?" Hearing CE's words, Bailey Yan's eyes moved and she shook her head. "Nothing big happened in the deity continent, but something big is about to happen on Earth." "Why do you say that?" CE frowned. "Hey, let me tell you. Are you going to a place called the Death Island?" The overgod snatched the right to speak from Bailey Yen and said to CE. Hearing this, CE's eyes darkened. "Yes. Don't go to that damned place. That place is part of the mysterious person's plan. He wants you and the sorcerer goddess to enter the deity continent from the Death Island and trap you there, You should know that the biggest obstacle for the mysterious person now is you. His next goal is to turn everyone on Earth into his slaves. After trapping you, he will be able to attack Earth without hesitation. The Overgod said solemnly. His words did not seem to be a joke. Hearing the Overgod's words, Ce frowned. Father, how did you know all of this? Brat, don't ask me how I know. I just know. Moreover, the mysterious person will not be able to go to Earth for a while. But I know that in the near future, he will forcibly open a passage from the deity continent to Earth in a place called Biyao City in Z country. This way, there will be 3 passages from the deity continent to Earth. However, for the time being, I don't know the exact location of the passageway in Biyao City in the eastern province of Z country. What I do know is that the mysterious man will send his subordinates to Biyao City. So, after you and Sorcerer Goddess return to Z country, you must go there and investigate the location where the mysterious man opened the passage. You should be able to find the real hiding place of the mysterious man. The Master God's words reached Ce's ears. Upon hearing this, Ce's eyes flashed. In the next moment, he didn't listen to the Overgod and turned to leave the Bailey family. You stinking brat, wait for me. This old man hasn't finished speaking yet. Seeing this, the Master God stood behind Ce and shouted. He wanted to chase after her but was stopped by Bailey Yen. The Lord God's current appearance was only in his early 20s. The way he referred to himself as an old man was truly shocking. So stop fooling around in front of me, you old geezer. Go back to your temple. Bailey Yen glanced at the Lord God and walked back to her house. Don't. Yen, my temple hasn't been repaired yet, has it? Now the temple has become a ruin. If you don't take me in, I'll have nothing to eat. After saying that, the Master God chuckled and shamelessly walked towards Bailey Yen. Death Island. Yunjian had been here for almost 3 days. 3 days had passed and Ce still hadn't come. Everything on Death Island made Yunjian feel that something was wrong, but Yunjian didn't say anything. Horace, Calvin, Ella, Felic, and the others didn't notice anything wrong. They stayed on Death Island in a rather luxurious villa built by Bogey. Bogey and the others were afraid of Yunjian, so they gave their villa to Yunjian, Horace, and the others. That night, at 1:30 a.m., Yunjian's eyes that were closed to rest abruptly opened. In the next second, she got up and went to the other rooms in the villa to wake up Horace, Calvin, and the others. What's wrong with Yunjian? It's the middle of the night. Calvin and the others couldn't understand. However, after they finished speaking, they saw Yunjian put her hand to her lips and made a soft, shoot sound. Then, she said, something's wrong with Death Island. We must leave immediately. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2298. Something's wrong? What's wrong with him again? It's the middle of the night, Yunjian, don't scare me. I'm scared. After hearing Yunjian's words, Ella suddenly felt a chill run down her spine. She was so scared that her expression changed slightly. Aren't you doing fine? You're so powerful that even the most powerful person on Death Island, Boki, listens to you. Moreover, he's so scared that he's willing to let us stay in his mansion. Haha. What could possibly happen? Yunjian, don't be so paranoid. You should wash up and go to bed. We've stayed here for 3 days and nothing has happened. Waking us up in the middle of the night to tell us this, it's quite scary. Felix stretched out his hand and yawned as he spoke. While speaking, Felix still had a sleepy look on his face. Felix, who was in his early 20s, was a very lazy young man. Only Calvin and Horace's eyes moved when they heard Yunjian's words. The two of them agreed with Yunjian's words. Let's leave Death Island immediately. Seeing that Calvin and Horace were no longer calm, Ella, who was also a girl in her early 20s, also became somewhat uneasy. It should be fine. Ayla comforted herself. Speaking up to this point, Ayla suddenly felt her heart tighten and tremble. Because from the conversation between Yunjian and Boqi, although they did not understand what Yunjian and Boqi were saying, Calvin, Horace, and the others were not stupid. Naturally, from the conversation between Yunjian and Boqi, they could tell that this place called Death Island seemed to lead to another world. If that was the case, then, thinking of this, fear flashed through everyone's eyes. Even their hearts could not help but tremble. While Felix, Ella, and the others were talking, Yunjian had already equipped herself with weapons. She did not explain anything. Instead, she lightly waved her hand and said, "Follow me closely." With that, she led the way out of the mansion. They went round the back of the house, without passing the field of tents where Bogi and the others were camped. Yunjian led Calvin and the others to board the yacht that they came from. After that, the yacht sailed along the sea and quickly returned to where it came from. When they left, they did not disturb Berkey and the others on Death Island. Obviously, if they followed Yunjian, it would be difficult for Calvin and the others to alert anyone. After a whole day of sailing, they finally left Death Island at 8:00 in the evening the next day and returned to the pier in Country S. Seeing the pier that they had come from in Country S, everyone could not help but heave a sigh of relief. However, when he thought about it carefully, he did not notice anything before. Yunjian wanted everyone to leave Death Island with her. What was going on? Thinking of this, Felix said, "Actually, nothing happened." "Yunjian, why do you want us to leave Death Island?" There was no response to Fei Lei's words. After docking the yacht, everyone boarded the pier. Not long after, there was a sound. Not long after, the group of 500 adventurers who were suppressed by Yunjian appeared at the pier. It turned out that they did not leave. The ones leading them were Jiawei, Eva, and the others. Jiawei had gathered these 500 adventurers last time. After one of the adventurers was killed by Yunjian, although he was afraid, he was unwilling to see Yunjian and the others board the yacht to Death Island. As a matter of fact, Jiawei did not leave. He led these 500 adventurers to guard here. When they saw the yacht coming back from afar, they all swarmed over. They would not have known if they did not look. However, when they looked, it was really Yunjian and the others. Therefore, when they saw Yunjian and the others, Jiawei asked directly, "Did you come back from Death Island?" After that, afraid that Yunjian would kill them like how she killed the adventurer, Jiawei said, "Don't misunderstand. We are not here to find trouble with you. We just want to know about Death Island." Yunjian ignored Jiawei and the others' goodwill. Not long after, Yunjian led Calvin and the others to a hotel near the pier in Country S. Jiawei and the others wanted to know about Yunjian and the others going to Death Island. Therefore, they all stayed in the same hotel as Yunjian and the others or in another hotel. At night, Yunjian, Calvin, and the others were eating at the dining table. She frowned slightly, feeling that something bad was going to happen. Death Island was not that simple. However, just as Yunjian was thinking about it, she habitually picked up a chicken drumstick and stuffed it into her mouth. Yunjian suddenly felt nauseous. She spat out the chicken drumstick and turned her head to the side to retch. Please remember the domain name of this book, .com, Wonderful Book Mobile Version Website, .com. Chapter 2299. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation, page 1/1. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. Yunjian leaned to the side and retched twice before pressing her throbbing head. "Yunjian, what's wrong with you?" Seeing Yunjian suddenly retching, Calvin hurriedly asked Yunjian in a caring tone. "I must have eaten something bad, it's nothing." Yunjian turned around and lightly pursed her red lips before replying. Yunjian did not think about this at this moment, her thoughts drifted far away. On the island of death, she felt a very unusual aura. It was the aura of a conspiracy. Although Yunjian did not sense any danger before this, she always trusted her intuition. Hence, she led Calvin and the rest to leave the island of death overnight. However, Yunjian felt that things were not that simple. Then you have to take good care of your body. For us girls, health is the most important thing. Everything else is bullshit. Come, when you're not feeling well, eat more nutritious vegetables. Eat more. After hearing Yunjian's words, Ella took the chopsticks in Yunjian's hand in a friendly manner and used the chopsticks to pick up some simple vegetables on the table and place them into Yunjian's bowl. Vegetables, radishes, cabbage, they were all boiled with a little oil and were cooked very lightly. It was the traditional taste of S country's cuisine. Yunjian did not feel that there was anything wrong with Ella's sudden friendliness. She nodded and ate some bland food. She probably caught a cold. The group had dinner in this restaurant and returned to the hotel. When the group returned to their rooms to sleep, Yunjian stopped them and reminded them in an extremely soft voice, "Don't worry. Don't sleep too deeply tonight." She did not say anything else. Due to Yunjian's previous ability, Calvin and the rest did not say anything and only nodded in response. Nightfall. The wind was chilly. Night in S country. After all, it was winter and the weather was very cold. Kacha. Yunjian slept in the room with her eyes closed. She felt that the window had been pried open with tools for half an hour before it was finally opened. Yunjian had already felt the noise from the moment the window lock was pried open with a tool. The funny thing was that the person outside thought that he hadn't been discovered and took half an hour to open the window. With a kacha sound, the window lock was finally pried open. The window was also opened slightly. A small smoke-hole-like object was stuffed in. Not long after, dense smoke floated out of this small smoke-hole-like thing. Yunjian could tell that the smoke coming out of the cigarette hole was knockout powder. This kind of knockout drug could make people fall into a deep sleep, at least for a short period of time. This drug was very effective on ordinary people, but it didn't have any effect on her. He had been picking the window lock for half an hour and had even tried to knock her out with this kind of low-level drug. Yunjian's lips curled up coldly. The next second, she smoothed her lips and closed her eyes, pretending to be asleep. When there was no more noise in the room, the smoke-hole-like object was removed. After the smoke in the room dissipated, two people came in through the window. Is she asleep? She must be asleep. The composition of my knockout powder is enough to knock out a cow. Let's not waste any more time. Let's hurry up and find the item. Once we find it, let's leave immediately. Two sparse voices were heard. These two faint voices belonged to a man and a woman. Even if Yunjian didn't open her eyes, she could tell that the voices belonged to none other than Jiawei and Eva. Jiawei and Eva had never been to Death Island. After Yunjian and the rest returned, they refused to tell them what had happened on Death Island. Hence, they came up with the idea of stealing Yunjian's sky blue necklace. Found it. It's here. Then let's hurry up and leave. It'll be bad if she wakes up. After searching for about 10 minutes, Jiawei and Eva finally found the sky blue necklace. The two of them happily walked out of the window, intending to leave Yunjian's room through the window. However, just as the two of them were about to walk to the window, 3 throwing knives suddenly flew past Jiawei and Eva's left, top, and right sides. The 3 throwing knives hit the wall by the window that Jiawei and Eva were about to leave, piercing straight into the snow-white wall. This sudden change caused Jay and Eva's hearts to tighten. Just as the two of them were in a state of panic, the voice of the young girl, who they thought had already fainted, rang out from behind them. Her words actually carried a trace of hair-raising meaning. Since the two of you are here, why don't you stay for a while before leaving? Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2300. Page 1/1. Yunjian's voice suddenly sounded from behind Jiawei and Eva. Just now, Jiawei and Eva were sure that Yunjian had been drugged, and had searched for 10 minutes before they found the sky blue necklace. From start to finish, Yunjian did not move at all. That quiet look, if she was not really drugged, how could she be faking it? Hence, Jiawei and Eva did not suspect that Yunjian was pretending to be asleep. However, when Jia Wei and Eva took the sky blue necklace and were about to walk out of the window, Yun Jian's voice sounded like a ghost. When the voice sounded, Jia Wei and Eva were shocked, and their faces turned purple. You, Yun Jian, you were not drugged. Jia Wei turned around, and saw that under the moonlight, Yun Jian had already come out from the bed to stand behind them. She did not make a single sound, and was like a ghost. Jia Wei widened his eyes at the sight and stared at Yun Jian in disbelief for a few seconds, his face draining of color from the shock. Why would I be drugged? At this time, Yun Jian was holding a butterfly knife in her hand. She twirled the butterfly knife in her hand, and the way she twirled it was fast and skillful. There was no light in the house, so Yun Jian's face could only be seen clearly through the moonlight that shone into the house from outside. At this moment, Yun Jian held the butterfly knife in her hand, and looked like a death god. In this dark night, she was like an emissary from hell, causing Jia Wei and Eva to shiver. Yun Jian, I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I just wanted to take this sky blue necklace, that's all. Furthermore, this sky blue necklace is useless to you. You guys have already been to the Death Island, and refused to tell us what's there. Why can't you give us the necklace and let us go there? When Jia Wei saw Yun Jian holding the butterfly knife, he panicked. He then blinked and gripped the sky blue necklace tightly, as though he would rather die than return it to Yun Jian. She's here. Just as Jia Wei was protecting the necklace, and did not intend to return it to Yun Jian's indifferent voice sounded. What? When Jia Wei and Eva heard Yun Jian's words, they were stunned, and did not understand what Yun Jian meant. Yun Jian narrowed her eyes, and suddenly charged towards Jia Wei and Eva with the butterfly knife. The room was only so small, Jia Wei and Eva were standing 3 meters away from Yun Jian. When they saw Yun Jian charging towards them, they saw the butterfly knife in Yun Jian's hand, and recalled the scene of Yun Jian killing people at the pier. Jia Wei was so frightened that he crouched down, holding his head, and cried out, I was wrong. I was wrong. I'll return the necklace to you. I'll return it to you. But just as Jia Wei was kneeling down and apologizing, and Eva was trembling in fear, Yun Jian leaped over Jia Wei and Eva, and jumped out of the window. Before Jia Wei could hold his head, he saw this scene. His eyes moved slightly, and in the next second, his face turned pale with fright. This is the 5th floor. Yun Jian jumped out of the room, and that's like jumping 5 floors. Jumping from 5 floors to flat ground, it would be strange if a normal person did not die. Is Yun Jian courting death? Jia Wei and Eva were so frightened that they turned to look out the window. Their faces turned pale, and they looked like they could not turn back for a long time. But when they turned to look out the window, they thought they would see Yun Jian jump down 5 floors, and even if she did not die, she would be crippled. Jia Wei and Eva's eyes widened, and they forgot to breathe. All the cells in their bodies were frozen by Yun Jian's next move. They were so frightened that their jaws dropped to the ground, and their eyes bulged out of their sockets. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2301. Yun Jian, who had jumped out of the window, landed at a height of about 15 to 16 meters. Her slender body shone brightly under the moonlight. Her petite body landed on the ground at the speed of light and lightning from a height of almost 5 stories. It was as if an ordinary girl had magic on her, as if she was a character from a legend. After jumping down from the 5th floor, she landed on the ground slowly. This unrealistic scene scared Jane and Eva so much that their faces turned pale. How is this possible? She's not a god. Could it be that Yun Jian is a god? Jane and Eva were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. This did not conform to reality. It completely overturned Jane and Eva's thoughts. Then, right after Yun Jian landed on the ground, the snow-white moon in the sky seemed to have been dyed red by blood. The snow-white moon had actually turned into a crimson moon within everyone's sight. What is going on? What is going on? Eva was so scared that she couldn't care less about her image. She grabbed Jane's collar and screamed. Eva's screams attracted Calvin, Horace, Ella, and the others who were staying in the hotel and were warned by Yunjian not to sleep too deeply. After Calvin and the others came out, they ran downstairs and stood next to Yunjian. When they saw the strange crimson moon in the sky, Calvin and the others were shocked. It's not like there's a lunar or solar eclipse today. Why did the moon turn red? Calvin stood next to Yunjian. When he saw this scene, his face darkened. This strange phenomenon horrified Calvin. Yunjian narrowed her eyes and didn't say anything. The next second, her red arc curled up coldly. Just as Yunjian's lips curled into a smirk, an unbridled cackle rang. Ha ha ha. I didn't expect you to see through me and escape from Death Island. But it doesn't matter. Even if this isn't Death Island, Sorcerer God, I can still find you. The next second, a man in a black robe appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Boji, that's Boji. Horace clenched his fist and shouted when he heard the man's voice. Horace would never forget that man's voice for the rest of his life. That man in the black robe was Boji. He was the leader of the group of people on Death Island who killed Horace's good friend 20 years ago. Boji, who was originally terrified of Yunjian, seemed to have turned into a different person. He looked at Yunjian from afar and laughed maniacally as he tore his mask off. Everyone around was stunned. What's going on? Didn't Boji already admit defeat to Yunjian? I've heard of him for a long time. After he betrayed the God's continent 10,000 years ago, he was expelled from the God's continent and was never heard from again. He once killed countless innocent cultivators on the God's continent and was known as the Great Killing Devil. He was ranked in the top 10 on the God's continent strength list. Now that I've seen you today, you're indeed extraordinary. At this moment, Yunjian's voice suddenly rang out. Her words were directed at Boji. When they heard Yunjian's words, Calvin and the others were stunned. Calvin and the others already knew that there was another continent in this world, but they didn't know what it was like. However, from Yunjian's words, they could tell that, this Boji, in another world, was a big shot who could shock everyone. Although Jiawei and Eva were confused and didn't know what Yunjian was referring to, they could tell that Boji, who had suddenly appeared, was definitely not ordinary. After hearing this, Jiawei and Eva's bodies suddenly trembled. However, just when everyone was shocked by Boji's identity, Boji suddenly sneered at Yunjian in front of everyone. In spite of it, Yunjian's identity revealed by Burge struck fear into everyone's heart, making them forget to breathe. Ha! No matter how famous I am, I have to admit that I'm far inferior to you. As an immortal cultivator from a low-level continent like the Yulong continent, you have the ability to destroy the world. In the battle between the thousands of continents to determine who was the #1 continent, you, the sorcerer goddess, were merely a woman, but you suppressed all the continents and massacred countless strong cultivators who refused to admit defeat, pushing the Yulong continent to the throne of the #1 continent among the thousands of continents. Sorcerer goddess, I, Boji, would also like to meet someone as powerful as you. Please remember the domain name of this book, mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2302. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. 1,000 years ago, on the countless continents in the universe, there was a huge event that shocked the continents. That was when the strong fighters of the thousands of continents stepped forward to fight for the throne of the first continent. The first continent referred to a continent chosen from the thousands of continents in the universe to be the ruler of the thousands of continents. For example, a country had countless provinces, but only one of them was the capital. The capital was the largest area under the jurisdiction of all the provinces. Similarly, the countless provinces could be compared to the thousands of continents in the universe. The capital, the area under the jurisdiction of all the provinces, was the throne of the first continent. The first continent was the central platform that governed all the continents. In layman's terms, the first continent was the capital of a country. Therefore, back then, the experts of the thousands of continents had all stepped forward, wanting to contribute to their own continents and help them ascend to the throne of the number one continent. However, at that moment, the sorcerer goddess stepped forward. Once the sorcerer goddess stepped forward, she immediately massacred the strong fighters of the thousands of continents who stepped forward to fight for the throne of the first continent. She directly pushed the Yulong continent to the throne of the first continent. If the strong fighters of the thousands of continents dared to disagree, the sorcerer goddess would kill them. During that time, other than the strong fighters of the Yulong continent, the strong fighters of the other continents were all killed by the sorcerer goddess. Those who did not agree, the sorcerer goddess did not hesitate to kill them. She did not have the slightest intention of showing mercy. At that time, this matter shook all the continents and even spread to the ears of the gods continent. Although Calvin, Horace, Ella, Jane, Eva and the rest did not understand the meaning of Boki's words, they could tell from Boki's words how powerful the sorcerer goddess was. Calvin, Horace, Ella, Jane and the rest were completely dumbfounded. And from Boki's words, it seemed like Yun Jian was someone from another world. But from the conversation between Yun Jian and Boki, since the two of them could speak in a tone of mutual admiration, this meant that they did not have any enmity towards each other, right? At this thought, Calvin, Horace, Ella, Jane and the rest heaved a sigh of relief. But just as everyone was thinking this, Burge suddenly snorted and spoke impudently. Wizard god, what you should be thinking now is whether I, Boji, have joined the mysterious man's side. Then I'll tell you clearly now. Yes, I, Bogi, am now the mysterious man's subordinate. It was also the mysterious man's arrangement that I waited for your arrival on Death Island. I just didn't expect you to discover my purpose and escape. Humph, but it doesn't matter. Even without the help of the divine monarch, I still have the 100-fold potion that the mysterious man gave me. My strength can be increased by 100 times from my original foundation. This way, even if you are the sorcerer god, the legendary figure of the myriad continent, you will still be no match for me. As he spoke, he took out a bottle of potion and was about to drink it in front of everyone. Seeing this, everyone's heart trembled. Even Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. Her power was indeed above Boji's. But if Boki had drunk the 100-fold potion, then she might only be able to fight him to a draw at most. Even if they fought to a draw, she would still be seriously injured. However, just as Yun Jian was about to fight with Boki, a slender palm suddenly appeared on Boki's head. After the hand covered Boki's head, it grabbed. Boki's head, which was still laughing wildly, was instantly crushed on the spot. Blood splattered everywhere. Everyone who saw this scene was stunned on the spot. However, just a second before Boki's head was crushed on the spot, everyone heard a furious voice suddenly ring out. In that magnetic and pleasant male voice, there was a coldness that could not be ignored. Did you ask for my permission to touch my woman? Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2303. It was a magnetic, mellow male voice that was so pleasant that it sounded like there was no other male voice in the world. It was accompanied by the sound of chi chi chi. Everyone saw that after the slender hand covered Boji's head, it crushed Boji's head in front of everyone. It was like crushing a mosquito, and the mosquito's blood gushed out. Boji's head instantly turned into a pool of blood like killing a mosquito. His body was still there, but his head instantly exploded into a pool of blood. When this scene happened in front of everyone's eyes, it made everyone's hearts tremble violently. This unforeseen event happened so suddenly that even Boji himself didn't expect that someone would appear behind him. And after this person covered Boji's head with his hand, he crushed Boji's head. The speed of Boji's death was so fast that everyone present couldn't react in time. Everyone's hearts trembled violently. In that instant, everyone present was so shocked that they almost suffocated. The head of a living human being was actually, at that moment, everyone saw a handsome man who was half a head taller than Boji suddenly appear behind Boji. He was wearing black casual clothes. After the handsome man crushed Boji's head in front of everyone present, he kicked away Boji's corpse in front of him and walked towards Yunjian. Everyone at the scene was thoroughly frightened. Oh my god. This is too scary. Who is this person? He actually. Jia Wei and Eva stood on the 5th floor and watched the scene unfold in front of them. When they saw Ce walk towards Yunjian, the two of them were so scared that they didn't know how to describe it. Terrifying was the most appropriate word to describe Ce. Then, they saw Ce walk directly to Yunjian in front of everyone. He grabbed Yunjian's hand and walked out. Everyone present watched as Ce grabbed Yunjian's hand and left. Only Horace called out to Yunjian right before she was taken away, "Yunjian, you're the one who's leaving." "Young lady, thank you." Although it wasn't Yunjian who avenged him in the end, this handsome man who suddenly appeared clearly had a close relationship with Yunjian. This handsome man killed Boji for Yunjian. Therefore, Horace watched Yunjian leave with grateful eyes. The war had ended before it even began. Yunjian blinked, taking a long time to come to her senses. When she finally reacted, Ce had already pulled Yunjian onto the bus back to Z country. On the way, Ce repeated what the Lord said to her. After hearing Ce's words, Yunjian already had a plan. Z country's eastern province. She, Yunjian, had to go. She didn't know when the mysterious persons of Yunjian country's location of Yun, but Yunjian had already decided that she would go to Puyo City, disguise herself as an ordinary person, and look for the specific location of the channel. No matter what, as long as there was a glimmer of hope to find the mysterious person, Yunjian would not give up. She would make the mysterious person pay the price. Seeing Yunjian looking at the window outside the bus, Ce's deep eyes flashed. The next second, he put his handsome hand in front of Yunjian. Seeing an egg suddenly appear in his hand, Yunjian held back her breath and suddenly froze. "Where did you get this?" "A little girl gave it to you just now." "Eat it," Ce said. Just now, when Yunjian was absent-minded, a little girl ran to Ce and handed him an egg. Then she ran away. She was a lovely little girl. At this moment, Ce peeled the shell of the egg and handed it to Yunjian. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version of reading website. Chapter 2304. Page 1/1. There seemed to be a surge of heat in her abdomen that connected her throat to her stomach, pushing the food she had swallowed back from her abdomen. Yunjian had rarely noticed something like this. When the nausea hit her, she bent down almost reflexively to retch. It felt like something was about to come out from her abdomen, but nothing came out when she bent down to retch. Ce's eyes narrowed at the sight before he placed his hand on Yunjian's back as fast as he could and gave her a light pat, his brows knitted together as he spoke. His brows were furrowed as he asked, "Xiao Jian, what's wrong?" It was only after he was sure that the egg was fine that Ce peeled it for Yunjian. Of course, Ce would not make such a low-level mistake. When the nausea passed, Yunjian stuffed the egg back into Ce's hand with a frown and pressed her lips together. "I don't feel like eating meat recently. It's probably a stomachache. I'll be fine in 2 days." After Yunjian said that, Ce placed his hand on Yunjian's forehead with a frown to check Yunjian's temperature. After making sure that she did not have a fever, Ce retracted his hand and said sternly, "Come to the hospital with me when we get home." Ce's heart ached when he saw her retching. "Okay." Yunjian nodded. It was only in front of him that she could let go of all her toughness and just be a woman who was protected by him. In one's life, if one could find someone who was willing to give up his life for you, then one was very lucky. As for Yunjian, she was undoubtedly very lucky. In the vast and boundless universe, they were born together on Earth. They met and got to know each other among the more than 6 billion people on Earth. How much luck did it take for her to meet such a perfect person who was willing to give up his life for her? Ce kept his arm around Yunjian's shoulder throughout the journey, letting Yunjian fall asleep on his shoulder. When they returned to Longmen City, Ce brought Yunjian to the People's Hospital in Longmen City. In this era, mobile phones were not widely available yet, and it was even more impossible to register with a mobile phone. A city's people's hospital was the best hospital in the entire city, so there were many people waiting in line all day to register manually at the people's hospital. Before it was Yunjian's turn, Ce dragged her to the hospital for a walk. There were patients everywhere near the hospital. There were elderly people who were pushing wheelchairs outside the hospital to bask in the sun. There were also patients who had manually taken out registration numbers and were waiting to register like Yunjian and Ce. Although Yunjian was also a doctor, her expertise was limited to dealing with serious injuries. Some serious knife wounds, gunshot wounds, and other fatal external injuries. For example, she didn't know much about some diseases, but she knew a little about how to use medicine. When she was walking outside the hospital, she met an old man who was seriously ill. He was standing in the garden and telling stories to a group of children. She heard that these children would come here to listen to the old man's stories after school. The old man would tell stories to the children cheerfully all day long with a benevolent look on his face. Yunjian and Ce did not go up to him, merely watching from afar. Later, they overheard two passers-by talking to each other that the old man had just been diagnosed with cancer and the hospital said that he only had 3 months left at most. The old man used to be a teacher and used his pension to help many poor children after he retired. Now that the old man was sick, these children would walk for 2 to 3 hours from the town to the hospital every day just to listen to the old man's stories and accompany him on his final journey. Looking at the old man laughing with the children from afar, outsiders would not be able to tell that the old man was sick at all. Yunjian's lips curled into a red smile. After waiting for half an hour, it was Yunjian's turn to see the doctor. There were not many patients in the hospital who were admitted to this department, so she did not have to wait too long. The female doctor scanned Yunjian's body again and again with the equipment, examining her for a while. Finally, in front of Yunjian and Ce, the female doctor looked outside the door. Seeing that there was no one outside, she asked Yunjian and Ce, "You two are a couple, right? Have you slept together?" Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2305. The female doctor was about 25 or 26 years old. When she asked this question, a trace of redness flashed across her face. It was obvious that the female doctor did not have the experience of asking this question. As a doctor who treated patients, this female doctor had actually just graduated from university not long ago. Doctors weren't like nurses. Doctors spent a lot more time in university than nurses. Some people only needed to study for 4 years in university, but some doctors spent more time in university than the average university student. After all, as a doctor, it was not a joke if they accidentally caused a death. Therefore, they naturally studied more than some university students. This also caused this female doctor to only work in the hospital for about a year even though she was already 25 or 26 years old. Therefore, whenever the female doctor needed to ask about some more private topics so that she could prescribe the right medicine, she would feel somewhat shy and unable to say it. Suddenly being asked this question, Yunjian was also stunned. However, before she could recover from her shock, Ce shamelessly grabbed Yunjian's hand and said without hesitation, "Of course." When she said these 2 words, Yunjian could even hear a trace of pride in Ce's voice. Ahem. When these words came out, even the female doctor coughed a little awkwardly to try and alleviate the awkward atmosphere. After coughing twice, the female doctor rubbed her forehead and said, "Today, you two have been sleeping together. Recently, you two, don't sleep together too much. The little girl must have eaten something bad, and she's a little weak. That's why she's vomiting. I'll prescribe 2 medicines for the little girl, don't ruin her body." When the female doctor said this, she could not help but rub her forehead again. She felt that her forehead was about to burst. However, when the female doctor's words reached Yunjian's ears, Yunjian was not stupid. She naturally understood what the female doctor meant. "Young man, you should restrain yourself." The young lady. Ahem, she can't take it. What she meant was that Ce's body was too vigorous. When Yun Jian heard this, her face turned red. Before going to Death Island, CE was indeed very, 10 times a night, her waist was about to break. After the female doctor said this, she also felt a little embarrassed. Fortunately, she lowered her head and used a pen to write a page in the medical record book. It was a very messy handwriting that outsiders could not understand. After she finished writing, the female doctor handed the medical record to Yun Jian and CE. She coughed and said, "All right, go and get the medicine. You should restrain yourself for the next month. The little girl is still developing." Yun Jian pursed her lips slightly. She took the medical record from the female doctor and left with CE. After Yun Jian and CE left, they went straight home. After returning home, Yun Jian also took the medicine prescribed by the female doctor. She felt better, so she didn't think too much about it. Yun Jian had already returned to Longmen City. She did not care why the boss of the fox hunting organization, Long Shi, did not show up when he was supposed to accompany her to Death Island. Perhaps he was tied up with other matters. To Yun Jian, it was not important. Yun Jian planned to sneak into Biyao City in Eastern Province to keep an eye on the mysterious person's movements. She did not plan to go to the University of Electronic Science and Technology of China anymore. Even if she wanted to go, she would have to wait until everything was over. Longmen City Hospital, Longmen City. After a tiring day's work, the female doctor was about to take off her uniform and change back into her own clothes when she suddenly remembered that she had forgotten to press Yun Jian's stomach to check if she was pregnant when she was treating her in the afternoon. The young couple was together and even shared a room. Due to her shyness and lack of experience, she forgot to press the little girl's stomach for a moment. An experienced doctor could roughly check if a girl was pregnant by pressing her stomach. Fine, I'm such a fool. But it can't be such a coincidence, can it? The female doctor shook her head and stopped thinking about it. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile version website. Chapter 2306. Page 1/1. Yun Jian did not know that the female physician had forgotten to apply pressure on her stomach in a moment of confusion. She had been eating lightly these days. Before she left the hospital, the female physician had told her that she had a stomachache these 2 days, so she should eat more bland food when she ate. Nourishing her stomach was her top priority. After staying in Longmen City for 2 days, Yun Jian headed to Biyao City. She had an appointment with CE. As the mysterious man's divinity was damaged by CE a few years ago, he could not come to Earth directly in the near future. Yun Jian was in charge of going to Biyao City to secretly find out where the mysterious man would open the passageway between myriad continents and Biyao City. CE, on the other hand, would return to Deity Continent to handle some matters that needed to be handled before returning to Earth to meet Yun Jian. Before that, however, CE had left Yun Jian a crystal ball that could be used to contact him from Earth. The crystal ball was only the size of a pinky finger, a smaller version of a regular crystal ball. If CE was in Deity Continent and Yun Jian could not reach him with her phone, she could crush the crystal ball and he would rush to her side at once. Country Z, Eastern Province, Biyao City. Eastern Province was very far away from Jianghu Province. Biyao City in Eastern Province was a first-tier city in Country Z, both in terms of transportation and development. Comparing Biyao City in Eastern Province and Longmen City in Jianghu Province, Biyao City was a first-tier city in Country Z while Longmen City was just an ordinary city. The two were not on the same level. For example, people in Biyao City usually had a monthly income of 6,000 to 7,000 yuan while people in Longmen City only had a monthly income of 1,000 to 2,000 yuan. This was the difference. The difference between a first-tier city and an ordinary city. Of course, the higher monthly income in Biyao City meant that the amount of money spent was also higher than Longmen City. And in a big place like Biyao City, there was no shortage of rich people. Among the 3 wealthiest families in Biyao City, the Luo family, the Wei family, and the Hong family, the Wei family, who ranked third, had found their long-lost youngest daughter. Therefore, when Old Master Wei was happy, he held a banquet in a 5-star hotel in Biyao City and invited the upper class. It was 6:00 in the evening. At the entrance of the 5-star hotel, countless people from the upper class came to congratulate Old Master Wei, who was standing at the entrance of the hotel. The Wei family was ranked third among the 3 richest families in Biyao City. His status was naturally not to be underestimated. Old Master Wei's youngest daughter, Wei Lin, went missing when she was 8 years old. Old Master Wei had been searching for his youngest daughter for 10 whole years. He had finally found the real lost daughter of the Wei family, Wei Lin. That was why they held such a grand banquet. Ha ha ha, please. Everyone, please. The Wei family's old master, Wei Xiao, cupped his hands and invited everyone who came to celebrate into the hotel. The scene was extremely lively. Only after all the guests had entered the venue did the main character appear. At this moment, Old Master Wei Xiao's youngest daughter, Wei Lin, who had been lost for 10 years and was finally found, was brought to the scene. The young girl who entered the venue was just 18 years old. She was very beautiful, with a pair of big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Her skin was so smooth and fair that women couldn't take their eyes off of it. Coupled with her perfect high nose bridge and her captivating red lips. When Old Master Wei Xiao's youngest daughter, Wei Lin, who had been lost for 10 years, was brought to the scene, the entire venue fell silent. Beautiful. Too beautiful. Too beautiful. The 18-year-old girl who entered the venue was so beautiful that everyone present forgot to breathe. Ha ha ha. Wei Xiao, you old thing, you actually gave birth to such a beautiful daughter. Unbelievable. A middle-aged man stared at the girl for a long time before speaking to Wei Xiao. Wei Xiao only smiled and didn't say anything. The young girl looked timid the entire time, as if she had never attended such a gathering before. The banquet ended. The young girl was brought to Old Master Wei Xiao's room. Once the timid girl entered Wei Xiao's room, the timidity she had earlier was nowhere to be seen. That was right. The girl was none other than Yun Jian, who had come to Biyao City from Longmen City. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 2307. Page 1/1. At this moment, Yun Jian's timid demeanor from the banquet had faded away. Her sudden change in demeanor made Old Master Wei Xiao tremble. He looked to the side, avoiding Yun Jian's gaze. Only then was he able to resist Yun Jian's intense kingly aura. Yun Jian was not as timid as she was at the banquet just now. She wore a faint smile when her eyes met with Wei Xiao, the old master of the Wei family, after her fear and timidity faded away. Then, she took 2 steps toward Wei Xiao, walked past him, and came to the chair that Wei Xiao was supposed to be sitting on. She sat down on the chair without any hesitation and crossed her legs. That lazy look on her face, as if this was her territory, made Wei Xiao gulp hard as a chill ran down his spine. Yun Jian sat on the sofa and crossed her legs. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Wei Xiao. Only then did Wei Xiao speak. After this is done, can you really help me find my daughter, Wei Lin? Wei Xiao asked this very carefully, as if he was afraid of angering Yun Jian. Wei Xiao had no idea where Yun Jian came from or what she used to do. He only knew that Yun Jian's background was very powerful. As long as you play your role well and don't reveal our cooperation to anyone during this period of time, I will definitely fulfill your request, my dear father. After Yun Jian finished speaking, her eyes flashed sharply. She smiled faintly at Wei Xiao. For some reason, Yun Jian's words moved Wei Xiao for a moment. So, Wei Xiao nodded heavily. I won't tell anyone. Even my wife and children believe that you are the daughter I found after being separated for many years. As long as you can help me find my daughter, Wei Lin, I will help you hide it well. Wei Xiao's words made Yun Jian's eyes move slightly. She smiled faintly and didn't say anything. After leaving Wei Xiao's study, Yun Jian went downstairs to the Wei family's villa. That was right. She planned to sneak into Biyao City as the youngest daughter of the Wei family and pay close attention to the abnormalities in Biyao City. She, slaying God, would take care of any trouble. How could anything go wrong? As soon as Yun Jian went downstairs, she saw a gorgeously dressed woman standing in front of her. Seeing this, Yun Jian did not intend to pay any attention to him and walked to the side. However, when the woman saw that Yun Jian ignored her, she got angry and rushed over to Yun Jian. The woman said angrily to Yun Jian, "Wei Lin. How do you see the road? What can I do if I don't look after the house? No matter what, I'm still your sister, right? Is it because you've been missing for so many years that your temper has grown, or do you think you're so powerful?" This woman was Wei Lin's sister, Wei Min, whom Yun Jian was impersonating. Wei Min was Wei Lin's biological sister. Wei Xiao had 3 children. His eldest son was Wei Zai, his second daughter was Wei Min, and his third daughter was Wei Lin. It had been 10 years since Wei Zhao's third daughter, Wei Lin, was separated when she was 8 years old. Once 10 years had passed, a person's appearance would undergo an earth-shattering transformation. Therefore, it was not strange that Wei Zhao's second daughter, Wei Min, could not tell whether Yun Jian was real or not. Yun Jian, who was blocked by Wei Min, blinked and ignored Wei Min. She walked around Wei Min and headed to the main door. Seeing that Yun Jian was ignoring her, Wei Min shouted at Yun Jian's back. "Why did you come back? You're such an impolite wild girl. You're not my sister. You might as well die outside for the rest of your life. Why did you come back?" Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 2308. Watching Yun Jian walk out of the Wei residence, Wei Min clenched her fists angrily. Her hands trembled as she clenched them, looking like she could not wait to dash forward and tear Yun Jian to shreds on the spot. Seeing Yun Jian ignore her and leave the Wei residence, Wei Min cursed in her heart. "Why would you come back? When you were born, you took away my brother's love for me, and my parents' love for me. Why did you come back now? Was it because I didn't throw you far enough back then? I actually gave you a chance to find your way home." However, before Wei Min could finish her thought, her brother Wei Zai's voice came from behind her. "Sister, why are you standing here?" Wei Min's looks were average, but her figure was okay. Their father, Wei Xiao, was short and average-looking. Wei Min inherited her father's looks, so she wasn't considered good-looking. However, Wei Min knew how to put on makeup, so she covered most of her ugly face. Wei Min's brother, Wei Zai, was very handsome. Wei Min didn't know who inherited his looks, but Wei Zai was the most popular guy in the university. "Brother. It's Wei Lin. She just saw me and left without saying hello. I called her but she ignored me. I really missed her as a sister. I've missed her for 10 years. I'm really happy that she's back. But she doesn't seem to want to talk to me." Wei Min rolled her eyes and said to Wei Zai with a sad expression. This made Wei Zai, who had a glimmer of hope for his sister who had been separated from him for more than 10 years, gloomy. Wei Zai didn't say anything else. Yun Jian stayed at the Wei residence for 3 days. Generally speaking, the Wei family treated her well. They fed her well and dressed her well. 3 days later, Yun Jian was arranged to enter an elite college in Biyao City. This elite college in Biyao City included elementary, middle, high school, and university. Here, as long as you had money, you could enter. Those who entered this elite college in Biyao City were, without exception, the children of rich families. There were 1 or 2 students with excellent grades but poor family background who were specially recruited. However, under normal circumstances, such students would be isolated in the school. On this day, the weather was very clear. The sun was high up in the sky, and the morning air gave people a very fresh and comfortable feeling. Yun Jian carries a backpack and goes to the aristocratic school called the Imperial College. At the gate of the Imperial College, the cars that drove the children to and from school were all high-end sports cars, limited edition supercars. Yun Jian jogged directly from the Wei family to the school. Therefore, when they arrived at the school gate, Yun Jian, who did not have a luxury car to pick her up, became a special case that attracted a lot of attention. Yun Jian did not mind. After entering the school as per normal and reporting to the class, they were free to study. The University of the Royal Emperor Academy was similar to an ordinary high school. The students in the university sat in the same classroom and studied from morning to night. However, compared to ordinary high schools, the university students here were all children of rich families. Therefore, during class, the students either slept or played with their phones. Although the university at the Imperial College was different from other universities, and Gu Nianji studied in a normal high school, it was much more comfortable here than in other universities. Other than having to attend classes from morning to night like an ordinary high school student, you could do whatever you wanted here. Even if you skipped class, the teacher would not dare to say no. After Yun Jian entered the school, she briefly introduced herself to her classmates, but no one paid attention to her. At that time, Yun Jian was arranged to sit at the back of the classroom. The students in the classroom were all rich second-generation heirs. In 2003, mobile phones began to officially enter the Z country market. At this time, games such as the gluttonous snake on mobile phones began to become popular, and many people who had mobile phones played them happily. The students in the classroom were either playing with their mobile phones, sleeping, or playing games. It was a typical upper-class life. Yun Jian's classmate was a male classmate. At this time, the male classmate was playing with his mobile phone in distress and muttering to himself. He did not see Yun Jian at all. F***CK. This damn thing is broken again. I'll get my dad to throw you to the recycling plant later. Who told you to break it? The male classmate fiddled with the phone's power button, but it did not ring for a long time. When Yun Jian saw this, her eyes narrowed slightly. In the next second, she said, "Give me the phone." Suddenly, the male classmate heard Yun Jian's words and raised his head to look at Yun Jian for 2 seconds. Then, he said in a daze, "You know how to fix it?" "Yes." A simple word sounded. The male classmate was not pretentious. He threw the phone to Yun Jian. However, he saw Yun Jian pick up a black pen and take apart all the parts of the male classmate's mobile phone. Seeing this, the male classmate was stunned for a moment before he said loudly, Hey, you broke my phone. What should I do?" "Don't be noisy." These 2 simple words, but enough to suppress the male classmate, came from Yun Jian's mouth. Hearing this, the male classmate's heart skipped a beat, and he did not say anything. At that time, the male classmate saw Yun Jian take apart the mobile phone, reassemble it, and then put all the parts back into the phone. Her speed was so fast that it was as if she knew the internal parts of the mobile phone very well. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 2309. You. How did you do it? My phone hasn't been working properly for a few days now. How did you take out all the parts in the phone and completely put them back in? And this broken phone of mine actually turned on smoothly after you did that? After the male student recovered from his shock, he looked at Yun Jian with a shocked expression and said in a daze. The male student had just asked Yun Jian with a shocked expression, but he saw Yun Jian, who was sitting next to the male student, pursed her red lips. She put her index finger to her lips and made a shoo gesture, then said, "As long as you promise me one thing, I'll fix your phone in the future." Of course, Yun Jian wouldn't fix this male student's phone for free. From this male student's words and actions, she could infer that this male student's family was very wealthy. But the phone in the male student's hand was already very old. The model of the phone was also an old model that was released last year and had been used for a long time. For a rich second generation from a wealthy family to use a broken phone for so long, it was enough to prove one thing. His pocket money had been deducted by his family. Yun Jian's point just now almost caught the male student's heart. So after hearing Yun Jian's words, this male student who didn't even see Yun Jian at the beginning looked at Yun Jian with a face full of excitement, then said with a face full of surprise, "Really? Okay. As long as it's within my ability, I'll promise you. Speaking of which, you're a new student, right? Hey, in the future when you're studying at our Imperial Academy, if anyone dares to mess with you, just tell me. I'll support you." The male student's face was full of excitement. Yun Jian's red lips curved slightly, and she replied indifferently, "N. Oh right, I haven't asked for your name yet, HM?" The male student was too lazy to look at Yun Jian at the beginning, but at this moment, he looked at Yun Jian seriously. The Imperial Academy was a school for the aristocrats. The girls who studied here were all rich second generations. Their families were very rich, and they also liked to dress up. So, no matter how ugly the girls in the academy were, they wouldn't be that ugly. In short, there was no shortage of beauties in the academy. Therefore, even if Yun Jian was a natural beauty, this group of students who were used to seeing beautiful women only looked at Yun Jian a few more times. After the male classmate said this, Yun Jian pursed her lips slightly and replied indifferently, "Wei Lin. Ha. My surname is Luo Jichen." The male student who claimed to be Luo Jichen introduced himself to Yun Jian. Luo Jichen's Luo family was the head of the 3 richest families in Biyao city. The Luo clan, Hong clan, and Wei clan were ranked in that order. The Luo family had the highest status in Biyao city. As for Luo Jichen, he was the most mischievous and playful youngest son of the Luo family. Yun Jian nodded. "By the way, what do you want me to promise you?" Luo Jichen asked after getting acquainted with Yun Jian. "You'll know when the time comes." Yun Jian narrowed her eyes. After she finished speaking, she didn't say anything else. At 6:30 in the evening, the school ended early. Yun Jian packed her bag and was about to walk to the school gate. But when Yun Jian was halfway there, her eyes suddenly moved. In the next second, she turned around and walked to the mountain behind the school with her bag on her back. Just for a moment, she felt the fluctuation of spiritual power in the mountain behind the school. Yun Jian didn't hide her presence. She hid in the mountain behind the school. She saw 2 groups of people standing in the mountain behind the school. These 2 groups of people were both students of the Imperial College. At this moment, one group of students had already been subdued by the other group of students. And Yun Jian saw her sister, Wei Min, and brother, Wei Zai, in the group of students who had won. They were Wei Lin's brother and sister, whom Yun Jian was pretending to be. "Hand over the thing." But she saw a boy standing next to Wei Min and Wei Zai. Compared to the other boys in the college, he was very handsome and was in line with the school's most handsome boy. This boy's eyes were very sharp. With a cold face, he shouted at one of the students who had been subdued. And among the students who had been subdued, one of them was tightly protecting something. It looked like he had been struggling for a long time. "Damn it. Break his dog leg. Let's see if he still hands it over." At this moment, a male student with dyed red hair bellowed with a thunderous voice. Picking up a metal rod, he directly smashed it towards the thigh of the student who was desperately trying to protect that thing in his arms. Ah! This student was hit by the metal rod. He cried out in pain and almost fainted. Yun Jian, who was hiding in the dark, narrowed her eyes. But just as Yun Jian was about to cross her arms and watch the show without hiding her hiding place, the boy with the sharp eyes suddenly looked in her direction. At the same time, he shouted, "Who's there?" Hearing this, Yun Jian raised her eyebrows. This person was quite vigilant. Hearing this, Yun Jian didn't pretend. She stopped crossing her arms and walked out. When she saw Yun Jian's sister, Wei Min, was shocked. Then, in front of everyone, she shouted at Yun Jian. "Wei Lin. Why are you here? Please remember the domain name of this book." Mobile reading website. Chapter 23:10. Page 1/1, Wei Lin, was Yunjian's current identity. Hearing Wei Min's words, the group of students standing beside Wei Min gulped in shock. Especially the boy who dyed his hair red. When he heard what Wei Min said, he blurted out in shock at her before Yunjian could. "What's wrong with you? Min, is this your younger sister who was lost for 10 years before she was found, Wei Lin?" The red-haired boy was called Hong Ling. Hong Ling's Hong clan was the second most powerful clan in Biyao city. And Hong Ling was the only son of the Hong clan. Hence, the person who was usually brutal and ruthless, who had used a metal rod to smash the leg of a student who was protecting something in his arms, was Hong Ling. After being pointed out by Hong Ling that Yunjian was her sister who had been lost for 10 years, Wei Min's face froze, and a look of displeasure flashed across her face. However, in front of everyone, Wei Min was obviously very concerned about her reputation. Yunjian saw Wei Min scrutinizing the handsome boy who had a piercing gaze and a cold face from beginning to end with a bashful gaze before she spoke up. "I'm sorry, but I'm sorry, but I'm sorry. That's right. This is my poor sister who was lost for 10 years, Wei Lin. My sister was lost for 10 years, and I don't even know what kind of suffering she went through outside. Was she bullied by others? I heard from the news that after many girls were kidnapped, they would be defiled. Lin, sister, is really sad that I wasn't able to stay by your side and protect you." Wei Min glared at Yunjian, but said such words. In front of everyone, Wei Min was a sister who was thinking for her sister. However, her words were not about Yunjian who had been kidnapped for 10 years. She might have been defiled by men outside, and might even be a prostitute who had been ridden by thousands of men. Hearing Wei Min's words, everyone looked at Yunjian strangely. Even the brother Wei Zhe, who had a trace of pity for his sister who had been lost for 10 years, instantly lost all good feelings towards Yunjian. Unlike the crowd's reaction, the boy who had a sharp gaze and a cold face throughout, like he was the target of a teenage girl's adoration, glanced at Yunjian out of the corner of his eye with a hint of interest. This girl saw how Hong Ling had used a metal rod to break the leg of a normal student, and she was not afraid. His eyes were sharp, and his face was cold from beginning to end. The boy who was pursued by all the girls was called Luo Jiejun. That's right, Luo Jiejun was the brother of Luo Jiechen who Yunjian met in the classroom. And Luo Jiejun was not only the eldest son of the Luo clan, he was also the most popular boy in the Royal Academy. At that time, Luo Jiejun looked at Yunjian with interest. At this time, everyone present thought that Yunjian would rush into Wei Min's arms and hug her sister after hearing Wei Min's words. Or perhaps, when they saw Hong Ling smash that student's thigh with a metal rod, they were so scared that they screamed like ordinary female students. Everyone only saw Yunjian walking towards the student whose leg had been broken. If a normal girl saw such a dark scene, she would definitely scream in fear. When the others saw Yunjian walking toward the student whose leg was crippled, they thought that Yunjian was going to feel sorry for the student like a normal girl who would even feel sorry for an ant that was trampled to death. However, they saw Yunjian walk over without a word and step on the student's leg that had been broken by the metal rod. Injury on top of injury. The student screamed in pain after being stepped on by Yunjian, and the item in his hand was thrown out. Yunjian successfully caught the item thrown out by the student. Then, in front of Luo Jiejun, Hong Ling, Wei Zhe, Wei Min, and the rest who were all dumbfounded, she expressionlessly said to the student whose leg had been broken, "I'll take your item." Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 23:11. Page 1/1. They had thought that Yunjian would go up to the student whose legs were crippled like a normal girl, or that she would stare at the student in horror and disbelief that they dared to do such a thing. Who knew that Yunjian would step forward and stomp on the thigh of the student whose legs were crippled by the rod, causing the student to nearly pass out from the pain as the item he was holding was flung out of his hand. Wei Min and Wei Zhe had been separated from each other for 10 years and had only just been found. How could she not be afraid after seeing such a dark scene in the school? Not only that, she stepped on the student's thigh without any fear and simply snatched the item from the student's hand. Luo Jiejun narrowed his eyes and looked at Yun Jian with a strange gaze. This little girl who had just been found by the Wei family was not ordinary. She was really different from other girls of her age. She had successfully attracted his attention. Wei Zhe and Wei Min were also completely stunned. They had never thought that their little sister, who had been separated for 10 years and was so timid that she would hide in her mother's arms when she saw a cockroach or a rat, would actually be able to do this. Not only did she dare to look at the scene of the student's legs being crippled by the metal rod, she even dared to walk over and step on his thigh, forcing him to return the item in his arms. This was the first time Wei Zhe had looked at Yun Jian properly since his little sister who had been lost for 10 years had returned. Wei Min was so scared that her face changed. Even someone like her who often saw school fights and students beating each other up would be scared out of her wits when she saw Yun Jian's actions. And she actually did it so naturally. F***ck, Zhe, your little sister who had been lost for 10 years is quite fierce. Too fierce. I just crippled that guy's legs and he was still protecting the item in his arms. She stepped on it and that guy was in so much pain that he couldn't even care about the item. 2F** King fierce. When Hong Ling, who had smashed the student with the iron rod, saw this scene, his shocked expression suddenly changed. He walked in front of Wei Zhe and grabbed him by the shoulder, shouting at him in shock. At this moment, Yun Jian took the item that the student had thrown and turned to leave. The item that Yun Jian had taken was a fan. But it was different from normal fans. There was a layer of faint spiritual energy on the surface of this fan. Regardless of whether the fan came from Wandao continent or not, Yun Jian was certain that it had something to do with Wandao continent. Just as Yun Jian was about to turn and leave, Wei Min's voice continued, Lin, wait. Wei Min's greeting sounded like she was really welcoming Yun Jian, her biological sister's return. Hearing this, Yun Jian's her eyes narrowed and stopped her footsteps. Lin, since you're back, big sister will introduce you to everyone. Wei Min looked at Yun Jian with the expression of a loving big sister and said. Students who studied in normal schools had their own circle of friends, not to mention students who studied in this kind of aristocratic school. People with Wei Min's family background and status usually hung out with people of similar family background and status. Moreover, in this kind of aristocratic school, people who usually acted alone wouldn't be able to find friends and would be in a very awkward situation. So when everyone heard Wei Min's words, they all waited for Yun Jian to integrate into the group. But who knew that after Yun Jian stopped, she turned her head slightly and coldly said something that no one expected in front of everyone, no need. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. Chapter 23:12. Page 1/1. Yun Jian's words spread across the entire hall. Everyone present was startled by the sudden change of events. Even a young girl from an ordinary school was used to hanging out with friends. She had to go to the cafeteria with her friends, go to the bathroom with her friends, and go to PE class with her friends. If she couldn't find any friends, she would be seen as a loner. Outsiders might even think that she was crazy, so no one wanted to be her friend. Naturally, young girls were the most afraid of being looked down upon, so they would usually find someone to hang out with them. Even if they didn't have any friends, they had to blend in with the group. This was just an ordinary school, and in the Imperial Academy, this was even more obvious. Most girls would blend in with their group. But Yun Jian's words, don't need? When these words came out, everyone present was stunned. Even Luo Jiejun frowned and looked at Yun Jian with interest. Yes, whether she was playing hard to get or not, she had successfully attracted his attention. And at that time, Yun Jian turned and left after saying these words. She was a loner. Yun Jian exuded an aura that was different from others, so everyone present couldn't help but look at her differently. It was the first time Luo Jiejun, Hong Ling, and the others had seen her innately arrogant aura that made everyone present submit to her. Even Wei Zhe had to reevaluate his sister, who had been lost for 10 years. Yun Jian put the fan with spiritual power into her backpack and returned to the Wei family. In the next few days, Yun Jian went back and forth between the Wei family and the Imperial Academy. She also woke up early to do morning exercises and exercise. She didn't fall behind in any of them. Ever since that day, Luo Jichen was no longer afraid of breaking his phone. And ever since that day, Luo Jichen also followed Yun Jian. Even when going to the cafeteria, Luo Jichen had to go with Yun Jian. As the young master of the Luo family, Luo Jichen's status in the Imperial College was not ordinary. Although Luo Jichen was slightly inferior to his brother Luo Jejun in terms of excellence and appearance, Luo Jichen was still the young master of the Luo family, and his appearance was not bad. Luo Jichen was also considered the most handsome man in the Imperial College and was sought after by countless girls. Therefore, when they saw Luo Jichen chasing after Yun Jian every day, all the girls thought that Luo Jichen had fallen in love with this new female classmate. Therefore, these days, no one treated Yun Jian nicely. At this moment, Yun Jian was sitting at a table in the cafeteria. Luo Jichen stood beside Yun Jian like a servant. He asked Yun Jian what she wanted to eat and he would help her get it. Whatever. Yun Jian was not a picky eater. After all, Luo Jichen was a boy and Yun Jian was a girl. Outsiders thought that Luo Jichen helped Yun Jian line up for a big lunch box every day because he had fallen in love with Yun Jian. But no one knew that Luo Jichen was afraid that his family would deduct his pocket money. If his phone broke, he would have no money to fix it. He would be bored in class, so he tried his best to please Yun Jian. Okay. Sit down, I'll help you get the lunchbox right away. After hearing what Yun Jian said, Luo Jichen immediately ran to line up for the lunchbox. Wait. Yun Jian stopped him. She paused for a moment before adding, get more sour dishes. In the past, Yun Jian was never a picky eater. She had a special favorite dish, but she did not ask for too much. But recently, she had fallen in love with sour vegetables. What was going on? Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 23:13. Page 1/1. But Yun Jian didn't think too much about it. After Yun Jian said that, Luo Jichen answered and ran to get Yun Jian's lunchbox. Yun Jian rested her eyes with her elbows on the school cafeteria's dining table with a hand on her forehead. Wei. Sister, you're here alone? Just as Yun Jian was about to close her eyes to rest, her sister Wei Min's voice suddenly sounded. Then, even if Yun Jian didn't open her eyes, she could feel that Wei Min was walking towards her with a group of people from the mountain behind the school that night. Children from rich families like Wei Min and Wei Zhe usually hung out with other children from rich families who were about the same as them on campus. So, it wasn't strange that Wei Min and Wei Zhe were accompanied by Luo Jejun and Hong Ling. Luo Jejun could not help being captivated by Yun Jian's charisma when he saw her sitting alone at the canteen table with her elbows on the table and her eyes closed lazily with a hand on her head. He took a few more glances at her. Luo Jejun was known as the Cold Prince in the Imperial Academy and was called Young Master Jun. He was one of the most popular school hunks in the Imperial Academy. So, when Luo Jejun looked at Yun Jian a few more times, the surrounding girls looked at Yun Jian with resentment. Back then, Wei Min, who was Yun Jian's biological sister by name, had wanted to call her Wei Lin, but she forced herself to call her younger sister, instead of calling her by her full name in an unfriendly manner. Seeing the boy she admired, Luo Jejun, look at Yun Jian a few more times, Wei Min used her thumb to dig into the flesh of her hand. Because she used too much force, her knuckles turned white. In spite of it, Wei Min still flashed a kind smile at her in front of everyone. Hearing Wei Min's voice, Yun Jian only opened her eyes and glanced at Wei Min before closing them again. Wei Lin. Min is calling you. Even if you were separated for 10 years and only found recently, Min is still your sister. No matter what Min is greeting you, you should at least respond. Seeing Yun Jian glance at Wei Min and close her eyes again, as Yunjian's brother in name, Wei Zhe couldn't help but yell at Yunjian. Wei Zhe originally still had some hope for his sister who had just been found. However, Wei Min had badmouthed Yunjian in front of Wei Zhe more than once, causing Wei Zhe's good impression of Yunjian. Especially after Yunjian returned to the Wei family, Wei Xiao, the biological father of the trio, and his wife, who was also Wei Min and Wei Zhe's mother, had given all their love and affection to their youngest daughter, Yunjian, who had just been found. It was also why Wei Zhe was estranged from Yunjian. "Brother, it's not my fault. I was just found recently, so it's normal that I'm not used to it. After all, I suffered a lot outside," Wei Min spoke up quickly at Wei Zhe's words. Her innocent look would make those who did not know the situation think that Yunjian was the one who bullied her. Hearing this, Wei Zhe's dissatisfaction with Yunjian increased. He frowned and paced 2 rounds on the spot before suddenly speaking to Yunjian in the tone of a brother lecturing his sister. "What's wrong with you? There's been a rumor in school recently that you were found after being separated for 10 years and that you're riding on the coattails of the Luo family's young master, Luo Jichen? Take it easy in the future. Since you're back in the Wei family, you're the face of the Wei family. Don't do anything embarrassing for the Wei family." There had been a rumor in school recently that Yunjian was riding on the coattails of the Luo family's young master, Luo Jichen. She was just short of doing something disgusting with her body. Obviously, Wei Zhe believed these rumors. Hearing Wei Zhe's words, Yunjian's eyelids twitched, but she didn't say anything. Seeing this, Wei Zhe thought that Yunjian had silently admitted to it. Wei Zhe was so angry that he thought his long-lost sister had really abandoned herself and was about to reprimand her again. The young master of the Luo family, Luo Jichen, who was rumored to be riding on Yunjian's coattails, was stumbling over with 2 bowls of lunchboxes. "Make way, make way. Make way for me," Luo Jichen said as he ran over. It wasn't until Luo Jichen placed one of the 2 lunchboxes in front of Yunjian that Wei Min, Wei Zhe, Luo Jejun, and the others saw Luo Jichen looking at Yunjian with a fawning expression. He smiled and said, "Madam, I've prepared your lunchbox. Try it and see if it's to your liking. If it's not to your liking, I'll get another one for you." Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Chapter 23:14. Page 1/1. Seeing Luo Jichen using such a flattering expression to express his goodwill to Yunjian, Wei Zhe, Wei Min, Luo Jejun and Hong Ling were shocked. Especially Wei Zhe and Wei Min. The young master of the Luo family, Luo Jichen, was usually arrogant and playful. He was someone who did not do his job properly. Moreover, Luo Jichen was completely different from Wei Zhe and Wei Min. Luo Jichen walked the unorthodox path. Even if the Heavenly King came, he would not be able to make Luo Jichen bow his head. Just last year, because the principal of the Imperial College caught Luo Jichen violating the school rules, he severely criticized Luo Jichen. In the end, Luo Jichen sent the principal to the hospital. After this incident, Luo Jichen's father personally brought Luo Jichen to apologize to the principal. He even deducted 2 years of Luo Jichen's pocket money. It could be said that Luo Jichen was a little hedgehog that refused to admit defeat. At least Wei Zhe, Wei Min and the rest had never seen Luo Jichen submit to anyone. But what was going on today? The former little tyrant Luo Jichen actually called a girl grandaunt? He even personally queued up to buy her lunchbox. He even said, "If it's not to your liking, I'll get another one for you." Wei Zhe, Wei Min and the rest were stunned. Putting aside the fact that the rumor that Yunjian was riding on the coattails of the Luo family's young master was not true, based on the current situation, it was the young master of the Luo family, Luo Jichen, trying to curry favor with Yunjian. Wei Zhe's expression changed when he saw this. At this time, Luo Jichen also noticed Wei Zhe and the people standing around him. When he saw his big brother Luo Jejun, Luo Jichen was stunned. He then looked at Luo Jejun in a daze and said weakly, "Big brother, Jichen, what are you doing?" Luo Jejun shouted at Luo Jichen. No, I'm just getting a lunchbox for my grandaunt. Luo Jiechen was most afraid of his big brother. Now that Luo Jiejun shouted at him, his body trembled and he quickly said, "Grandaunt?" Hearing his younger brother address Yunjian in such a manner, Luo Jiejun turned to look at Yunjian with interest. A trace of interest appeared on his handsome face, which was enough to charm thousands of girls in the campus. "Hey! That's right. This is my family's great aunt. She was amazing. He will fix my phone." Luo Jichen answered his brother's question without reservation. No one was surprised to hear that Yun Jian knew how to repair her phone. After all, in everyone's eyes, Yun Jian was the youngest daughter of the Wei family who had been lost for 10 years. Perhaps she had done the hard work of repairing mobile phones outside? While they were chattering, Yun Jian put down her lunchbox, stood up, and walked out of the cafeteria. My great aunt, you finished eating so quickly. Wait for me." Seeing this, Luo Jichen couldn't care less about the others. He quickly took a few mouthfuls of his lunchbox and chased after Yun Jian. Luo Jiejun, who was standing in the same spot, saw this and narrowed his eyes. He stared at Yun Jian's departing footsteps with his sharp eyes and raised his eyebrows. Playing hard to get? She had indeed succeeded in attracting his attention. Today's class ended early because it was Friday. School ended at 3 in the afternoon. Yun Jian carried her backpack and left the school. After leaving the school, Yun Jian went straight to the market. There was an old man in his 50s who set up a stall in the market. The pickled vegetables he sold were especially delicious. For the past few days, she came back every day to buy the pickled vegetables. Seeing that Yun Jian had come again, the old man smiled and gave Yun Jian an appropriate amount of pickled vegetables. He even secretly gave Yun Jian an extra handful of pickled vegetables. When he handed the pickled vegetables to Yun Jian, he said with a smile, "Spicy and spicy, spicy and spicy. This little girl likes to eat sour food so much. When she gets married and has children in the future, I guarantee that she will give birth to a fair and chubby grandson." Top reading website, M. Chapter 23:15. Yun Jian's expression didn't change at all when she heard the old man's words, but she blushed slightly. Yun Jian's heart warmed at the thought that she and Ce would have children in the future. Yun Jian didn't respond to the old man's words. She just nodded at him and turned to leave the market. After returning to the Wei family, Yun Jian handed the pickled vegetables to the Wei family servants. Then, she went upstairs to her room. Yun Jian placed her school bag on the desk in her room and took out a few throwing knives, 2 butterfly knives, and a silver Desert Eagle pistol. After hiding everything under her bed, she changed into casual sportswear and went downstairs. Exercise before meals was also essential. However, the sportswear Yun Jian changed into was a tight-fitting, short-sleeved sportswear that exposed her navel. She also wore a pair of black shorts. This set of sportswear completely exposed her perfect curves. It was inconvenient to wear thick clothes when exercising. Although it was winter now, the whole country was cold, especially in the north. People who were closer to the north were so cold that they were almost curled up into a ball. However, Biyao city was located very close to the south of country Z. The climate was comfortable. Even in winter, the coldest time in Biyao city was at most the temperature of autumn in other regions. It wasn't considered cold. Therefore, even if Yun Jian went out to exercise in the middle of winter, she wouldn't feel too cold. However, it was difficult to hide a weapon in this set of sportswear, so Yun Jian decided to go out without any weapons. She was still a little stunned when she stepped out of the door. Because it had rained that morning, the streets were still wet. There was no sun for the whole day, so the accumulated water on the streets hadn't receded. Yun Jian jogged out of the house. She ran around a park near the neighborhood and a rather large lake beside the park before going home. Unexpectedly, she coincidentally bumped into Wei Min and the others on the way home. Wei Min, Wei Zhe, Luo Jiejun, and Hong Ling often played together. As a matter of fact, when Yun Jian returned home from school, they went to a nearby arcade to play games for a while before heading home. On the way home, Wei Min suggested that everyone go to Wei Min's house for dinner before disbanding. Everyone agreed with this decision. Luo Jiejun didn't like to go to the Wei family for dinner, but when he thought of the interesting little daughter of the Wei family, he agreed. Unexpectedly, he bumped into Yun Jian, who had just returned home from her night practice. Back in school, Yun Jian was dressed in loose-fitting clothes, so it was impossible to see her proud figure. In spite of it, what was presented in front of everyone was Yun Jian's voluptuous breasts that were wrapped in the tight-fitting sportswear, her slim waist, and her long, slender skin that looked smooth and tender just by looking at it. That golden ratio figure, coupled with perfect curves, made everyone present dumbfounded. By the time they reacted, Yun Jian had already walked past them and walked forward. Lin, you didn't even greet me when you saw me. Wei Min looked at Yun Jian's perfect figure and said with a fake smile. Yun Jian ignored her. Seeing this, both Wei Min and Wei Zhe felt awkward. Just when they thought that Yun Jian wouldn't turn around, Yun Jian suddenly turned around and looked at them. Do you know where in Biyao City there are abnormal occurrences? Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website. Chapter 23:16. What Yun Jian wanted to ask was naturally about the mysterious man opening the passage from the myriad continents to Earth. Of course, she wouldn't ask directly. So, she asked. Abnormal event? Hearing Yun Jian's words, the people present were slightly stunned. Even Wei Min was stunned. After realizing what she meant, the people present were puzzled. Why do you want to know about abnormal events? You're a young girl, it's better for you to know your place. Hong Ling, who had dyed his hair red, laughed after hearing Yun Jian's words. Hong Ling quite admired Yun Jian. Previously, when he smashed a student's thigh with an iron rod, Yun Jian, as a girl, not only did she not cry or make a fuss, she even went up and directly stepped on the student's injured thigh, and directly took the fan from his hand. This action was indeed admirable. However, at that time, Hong Ling and the others' purpose was not the fan in the student's hand, so the fan in the student's hand was taken away by Yun Jian. You just need to answer my question. After Hong Ling finished speaking, Yun Jian's eyes moved, and the sharp light in her eyes shocked the people present. However, the few of them still managed to react. There hasn't been any abnormal events in Biyao City recently. Luo Jiejun looked at Yun Jian with a playful expression and said. Jun, you. Seeing Luo Jiejun show such an expression, Hong Ling was shocked and stunned. After all, Luo Jiejun, who was known as the Cold Prince, never bothered to talk to girls automatically. Seeing Luo Jiejun actually talk to Yun Jian, Wei Min, who had a crush on Luo Jiejun, opened her mouth, closed her mouth, and then clenched her fists. Finally, Wei Min clenched her fists, looked at Yun Jian with a smiling expression, and pretended to be kind and said, Lin, where have you been all these years? What have you done? Lin, don't worry, no matter what you've done, we won't blame you, after all, you didn't have a choice. My heart aches for you, Lin, That's why I want to know what happened to you. Wei Min really touched a sore spot. When the surrounding people heard her words, they naturally thought that she was doting on her younger sister. However, Yun Jian wasn't stupid. She naturally understood the meaning behind Wei Min's words. She probably couldn't wait to hear something bad from him, right? Yun Jian's lips curled into a cold arc, but the moment she did so, her eyes darkened. Be careful. Get down. Luo Jiejun also suddenly reacted to the change in the surrounding atmosphere. He abruptly opened his mouth, and his reprimand sounded almost at the same time. Hearing this, Wei Min, Wei Zhe, and Hong Ling all dodged to the side. That's right, Luo Jiejun, Wei Min, and the others were all martial artists. The three great families of Biyao City were not as simple as they seemed. On the surface, the three great clans were righteous, but in fact, they relied on the underworld to make their fortune. Therefore, the children of the three big families in Biyao City all had the ability to protect themselves. This was something ordinary people didn't have. After everyone took cover, a row of machine guns swept past the place where they were standing just now. Seeing this, even Wei Min and the rest of the martial artists took a deep breath. When Wei Min came back to her senses, she wanted to turn around to look at Yun Jian with a smug expression. She wanted to show off that she and the others were children of the three great clans. Since young, they were different from ordinary students. Unlike her, an ordinary child who was found outside, they grew up with martial arts training. However, she saw that Yun Jian had already dodged the bullets and was standing in a very conspicuous spot. If the group of people suddenly appeared with machine guns, they would be able to shoot at them. Come back. This group of people must be here to assassinate us. You're just an ordinary person. Quickly find a place to hide. Leave this to us. When Luo Jiejun saw this, he frowned deeply and said. He and the others around him all thought that Yun Jian was just an ordinary person. Just when Luo Jiejun and the others thought that Yun Jian was so scared that she didn't dare to move and just happened to dodge the bullets, they saw Yun Jian suddenly smile in front of everyone. Then, in front of Wei Zhe, Wei Min, Luo Jiejun, and Hong Ling, she looked at the group of people with machine guns in front of her and said in an extremely arrogant tone, "They're here to kill me. Unfortunately, I didn't bring any weapons today. However, I can only trouble you to lend me your machine guns. Please remember the domain name of this book. Mobile reading website." Chapter 23:17. Page 1/1. Yun Jian's words shocked everyone present. These people who suddenly appeared with machine guns were all here to kill her? How was that possible? She was only the youngest daughter of the Wei family who had been lost for 10 years and had just been found. She was just an ordinary little girl who hadn't even received any training from her family. How dare she say that these people were here to kill her? On the other hand, Luo Jiejun, Hong Ling, Wei Zhe, and Wei Min were all children of the Luo, Hong, and Wei families of Biyao City. When the three big families of Biyao City, the Luo, Hong, and Wei families, first started out, they did not rely on the legal side. The three big families of Biyao City started out by relying on the underworld. Later on, they returned to the legal side. However, when they were in the underworld, they had offended many people, so the three big families were often hunted down. As the heirs of the three big families, Luo Jiejun, Hong Ling, Wei Zhe, and Wei Min had received special training from their families since they were young, so they were often hunted down. Therefore, when they saw the scene just now, Luo Jiejun and the rest's first reaction was that these people who suddenly appeared with machine guns were here for them. Who would have thought that Yun Jian would say something like that? Crazy, crazy. She's crazy. June, your skills are the best. Go and save her. The three of us will cover you, and when you come back, we'll choose to retreat quickly. Hearing Yun Jian's words, Hong Ling was stunned for a moment, then anxiously said to Luo Jiejun. Because of the sudden burst of machine gun fire, the red-haired Hong Ling no longer cared about his image and said to Luo Jiejun. Okay. Luo Jiejun nodded and was about to move towards Yun Jian. No. I'll go. That's my sister. I can successfully save her. Seeing that Luo Jiejun was about to go save Yun Jian, Wei Min panicked and grabbed Luo Jiejun's hand and shouted. If Luo Jiejun went to save Yun Jian, he would definitely touch Yun Jian's hand, and the two of them might even hug each other. This was unacceptable to Wei Min. I'll go. Wei Min still wanted to say something, but Luo Jiejun lowered his eyes and shouted. After saying that, Luo Jiejun let go of Wei Min's hand and planned to walk to where Yun Jian was just now. Just as they were done debating and Luo Jiejun flung Wei Min's hand away, intending to stand toward Yun Jian so that he could be shot by the sudden appearance of the handheld machine guns in front of him, Luo Jiejun was interrupted. Luo Jiejun and the others were surprised to find that Yun Jian was gone. Where is she? When Hong Ling saw this, he was stunned and shouted. She couldn't have found a place to hide, could she? We were thinking about her safety, and she actually. I mean, my sister is too naughty. Does she know that she's in danger? As her elder sister, I'm very worried about her. Wei Min thought that Yun Jian had found a place to hide herself. She was angry. Just as she was about to say something extreme, she suddenly realized that she was in front of Luo Jejun, so she quickly changed her words. Look! There! Just as Wei Min was thinking about how narcissistic Yun Jian was, insisting that the group of people armed with machine guns were targeting her in such a dangerous situation, she thought that Yun Jian was trying to attract the attention of Luo Jejun, who was known as the Cold Prince in school. Suddenly, a scream was heard. Hong Ling was looking at the group of people armed with machine guns not far away with a terrified expression. The machine guns in his hands were already gone. In front of that group of people was Yun Jian, who had disappeared in front of Luo Jejun and the others. At this moment, Yun Jian was standing on dozens of machine guns. She was standing lazily in front of everyone, waving a machine gun in her hand. That leisurely and lazy look was enough to make everyone tremble. It also happened to be in line with Yun Jian's arrogant words just now. She actually. In the blink of an eye, she actually snatched all the machine guns from the other party's hands. Hong Ling's eyes widened as he looked at the scene in front of him in shock. As Yun Jian's brother in name, Wei Zai's eyes also shrunk. Wei Min's face darkened. Luo Jejun, on the other hand, glanced at Yun Jian playfully. They didn't even see clearly when Yun Jian made her move. At this moment, they saw Yun Jian stepping on the pile of machine guns with one foot. After twirling the machine gun in her hand nimbly, she pulled the bolt and pointed the machine gun at the group of people in front of her. She sneered and said, "Tell me who sent you to assassinate me, and I'll give you a quick death." Translator, Atlas Studios Editor, Atlas Studios. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.